然后像现在这么去混，现在这么去混。
这样是推论嘛？那这个东西是我还是要很多公告了。这个是啊，这个是不行。就是我们现在设置的这个武器之类的，就是有 U2B 直播，U2B 直播，然后就是说，就是管理层里面跳不出来，这个账号可以直接选择就是开出了，现在在弄那个。现在虽然输是输了，但是
连接服务器失败。
YouTube 不让就是说指定一直播，YouTube 不让就是说指定一直播。那正确的 YouTube 播的话，比如说是不是这里要设置的就是服务器是哪个 YouTube， 还是这个吧？RGS 吧？是这个吧？是这个。然后服务器是电脑，是这个。然后服务器是电脑。是第一个嘛？还 但是就是而且服务器也是跟上面服务一样的。我已经开始看了，开始看就是我们试了很久你的账号，但是你账号播不了，我已经我的账号我已经在播了，已经播不了，就是。
那如果不是多渠道的话，是我别走
渠道第三个就是这样就可以了，你只要能预示的话，能用户随便把这些可以就可以了。
因为我们俩，那这样子的话，就一台电脑是我用不来，就把你的习惯给我。
那我要拍照，这边要拍照，就你们账号我不出去，我的账号你过来就直接可以。
它可能是但目前你的电脑是我的电脑
或者再后期就是用一个撕掉一个就用一个撕过来，或者是你好学你好了，
或者直接不给。
因为我的账号也没有因为我的账号它一直 首先要往这里开的，开的没关系，只要这里开过了，它那边才能开。
就是白人思维的话，我们会多优秀方面。我的意思就是，OBS 里面，如果你做Finance Lab 是我就是开，然后你看，对，我开那个Finance Lab 的 OBS，然后我估到这个画面超级就连 YouTube
现在可能是我的主机类比较在插电上有点就是
可以多有几
就是比如说我这个账号我自己播了随便播无所谓，然后你们的是挂在这里插电上面，我主要播一个东西才能开播吧。
它就是怎样你有方法？我也不知道，一个高手是做有些东西比较少，就是我可以直接用Fireside播的那个页面。
你一个账号就是可以有2个吧？你试过吗？用不了吧？这个他就
你得把它拿下去。
我们这是在大陆在你的公司在大陆上班还是在台湾上班？
有比较贵的。
不好意思，我们这是在跟别人上班，白天我在跟他们我跟你说，我最近他们是炒很多 employed 的 employees， 也拍了很多 employees 说的，是到 stable 了，Everyone is waiting for the next big way out. So you yourself as a developer or
no, I'm like part of
So I have one friend coming. Is this the first time to Singapore or not second time? You should try the Singapore rice. 海南鸡饭啊，他们说是海南，可是哎呦，这是新加坡的本地的口味不叫做 Pruden
不是，我是拍照，然后
拍照哦，可以。OK， 可以，你先告诉我。
你吹牛。可以了吗？
2分钟之后我们这个开起来了。我要看一下 O 不 OK。
开了吗？
它的翻译。就要更新了，
Really? Is it all set now?
这个怎么做？外面去的。站满，你自己站满。
Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to zkDay. We're going to get started very shortly, so if you haven't already, please find your way to a seat, and we can go and get started. There's a lot of room over here on the right side, and then probably some seats in the We'll go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is, I'm one of the co-founders of Manta Network. Who here has heard of Manta Network? Okay, cool. You know, that's the whole point. You know, hopefully by the end of this day, everyone will have heard of Manta Network. Really excited for everyone to be here. I know that Token 2049 has become quite an international conference, and just wanted to learn more about like who here is actually from Singapore. To learn more about like who here is actually from Singapore. Okay, not bad, quite a few. And anyone here flying in from Europe? Okay, all right, I guess it's not as international as I thought. And anyone from like North America? Nice, okay, I am too. I flew to San Diego. Like a 20-hour flight. It wasn't too amazing, but really glad to be here. Really glad to host this zk, but also around modularity, which I think is a really important topic around thinking about the future of scalability and usability in Web3. So we're really excited to come. You know, crazy on the knees. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, really excited to bring this edition of zkDay over to Singapore. Also would like to just see a raise of hands. Who's been to a previous zkDay in Paris or in East Denver? Okay, cool. So there was like 2 hands. That's great. This is a very new audience, and so hope to be able to bring you some really great programming. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce you guys to the hosts of the event day. Also team members from the Manta Network side. Lynn and Amelia. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Lynn and this is my colleague Amelia. We're so excited to be here, and again, welcome to zkDay Singapore and Modular edition. And there will be 6 panels lining up today, and the panel discussions will offer a diverse perspective from industry experts and ensuring a well-rounded exploration of the topics at hand. And I'm so honored to introduce you guys to the first Friday chat, the intersection of zk and modular, and we're privileged to have back on stage Kenny Lee, Manta's network co-founder, and Nick White, COO of Celestia.
Hello? Okay. Test. Yeah, we were supposed to have cake, but you know, I'm not sure where that is. I was actually fasting for the whole entire morning, so I was really looking forward to this cake, but I'm sure it'll show up sometime. In the meantime, I think, you know, I mentioned earlier about why I think this edition of zkDay is so exciting, not just because of zk, but also because of modularity. And I think like one of the unifying themes here is thinking about scalability and usability in Web3. So really excited to have Nick from Celestia on the stage as well. And maybe Nick, you can give a brief intro about yourself as well as Celestia.
Sure. Well, thanks, Kenny. It's a pleasure to be here. We're big supporters of Manta. And so Celestia is a new modular blockchain network. And it is focused specifically on the modular layers of data availability and consensus. And the purpose of Celestia is to build a blockchain that can scale rollups like Manta and provide for them very cost-effective, abundant block space to build upon that's very decentralized. So, Manta is one of our first partners. They're really sort of showcasing the power of this new modular paradigm, because Manta is an execution layer that has sort of customized virtual machine under the hood that makes it so compelling for developers who want to build zk applications and things like that. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and talk more about scalability.
Awesome, thanks, Nick. And yeah, so for the conversation today, right, like definitely we'll go into Celestia, we'll go into Manta, what we're all doing here and why it matters. But also I think like I want to keep it at this central theme of like, is as cliche as it sounds, like the next billion users, right? Like everyone keeps talking about that in Web3, but we haven't gotten anywhere close to that. When you think about like applications like Duolingo, I don't know if you guys know, it's like an app that teaches you how to speak other languages, right? And this single app itself has 10 million daily active users. When you look at the same thing in the crypto space in Web3, throughout all of the entire Ethereum ecosystem, right? Like we're looking at around 300,000 daily active users. And so the reality is that like, while we have all this amazing innovation, all this amazing talent, there is still that lack of the usability and the user experience side. And I think that really gets back to a lot of what we see in terms of the issues around scalability. And so that's what really excites me about modularity, about Celestia, and about like Manta building on the zk side to, we'll get into more detail about it, but essentially offer zk almost like a modular approach as well. And so just to kind of keep that at a high level, just to, warm our thoughts here, would love to just understand a little bit more of like, how do you define modularity?
So modularity is the concept that was introduced in 2019 by Mustafa Al-Bassam, one of the co-founders of Celestia, in his research paper called Lazy Ledger. And in that, he kind of had this insight that since the beginning of blockchain architectures, like with Bitcoin, Ethereum, all the way through all the modern L1s, people took for granted that you had to build a blockchain where you did all of the core functions within one protocol. So the single, like every monolithic protocol basically does consensus, data availability, and execution all at the same time. But there was no actual inherent reason why that had to be that way. And that you could actually, if you thought about it, you could distill and decouple those functions into separate protocols, and then have those protocols run on top of each other in a stack and kind of like borrow from each other the functionality that they need. And by doing this, you unlock a whole new architecture and sort of paradigm for how to build decentralized applications. And I really agree with you, by the way, that like, we need to, we're all here for applications and adoption at the end of the day. And like the modular architecture's goal is to make it so that we can build scalable, compelling applications for end users. And so once again, like the layers of the modular stack that are most important, I would say, are data availability, which is publishing data so that anyone on the internet can download it and see it and verify it. Then you have consensus, which is ordering that data. And then you have execution, which is taking those transactions and then executing them, like computing what the effect is, the output, like what the final state is after all those transactions have taken place. And so the execution layer is like rollups, and then L1s like Ethereum or Celestia focus on consensus and data availability.
Got it. Thank you for that explanation. And just to kind of bring a little more context into this, if I look at the state of blockchain right now, Web3, all the applications that are existing, yeah, sure, it's a little clunky, but as a critic, I could say it's working just fine. I don't really feel the effects of this like monolithic approach for data availability. And so like, what sort of difference can the end user really witness between like, having this sort of monolithic settlement versus having some sort of modular DA?
Yeah, well, I think we happen to be in a bit of a bear market now, and so there's not much activity on chain, and it's like we're kind of in a winter like hibernation mode. But whenever we've had like new waves of users and application and liquidity come on chain, we've suffered from fee spikes. And like, I mean, I've experienced this directly, like using DeFi and Ethereum, paying like $200 up to even $400 for a single transaction, which is absolutely insane. There's no way that can scale to the rest of the world. And so really one of the core innovations of Celestia and modular blockchains is that for the first time, we can have block space that scales with the number of nodes in the network. So any monolithic chain cannot increase the block size without centralizing the network. And so that's why you have things like Ethereum where they have a finite throughput. And once that's reached, the fees have to increase because there's just more demand than there is supply. And with Celestia, because we have a technology called data availability sampling, it means that we can increase the amount of block space in line with the number of light nodes in the network. And so that brings me to another piece, which is also different about the modular stack, which is that end users will be able to verify the chain directly by sampling Celestia and then verifying the proofs of the execution layers like Magenta. We think that's very important because ultimately verifiability is the core value proposition of blockchains and is what makes them decentralized. So yeah, that's sort of what the difference is for users.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, and I think especially when it comes to gas fees, right? I don't know how many of you guys have been in that recent market. I very much felt it as well. Especially when it came to zk applications also, which is part of the reason why we really started to explore Managed Pacific as a layer 2 solution. Part of the reason is because I don't know how many of you guys have interacted with zk-enabled applications on Ethereum, right? Like Tornado Cash, for example, right? Everyone's heard of it. But if you used it in the height of the bull market, you would have seen that just the gas fees alone were around the $200, $400 range that Nick had just described to do like a round trip transaction. And so that's very unsustainable. There's a lot of financial barriers there. So the question from, thinking about it on the Manta side is how do you reduce those fees? How do you make ZK-enabled applications as usable as possible? And so that's why we developed our universal circuits. And I think from a philosophical perspective, right, like the modularity around the data availability layer, and even I guess you could describe it as like the modularity around the zk, now offering zk as a service, it kind of also centralizes around that unifying theme of being able to bring that user experience so that you don't have to worry about paying $200, $400 in the future if there's ever any sort of bull market and there's heavy congestion on the network as well. And so, yeah, I think from my perspective, modularity, right, right now, we are looking a lot on the infrastructure level, and that's where the data availability really shines. I think that when it comes to the application level, right, offering services like, zk as a service so that you don't have to build your own sort of circuits and having able to instead call directly through SDKs is extremely powerful. And so at the end of the day, I think modularity for me really means just simplifying the developer experience and making it so that the developers can focus on what really brings value to their application, rather than having to worry about gas fees, having to worry about data availability, having to worry about building and compiling circuits, right? That's not what someone has to worry about. I think it's almost like a business, and when you are in business, you can worry about everything from the accounting all the way up to the product, or you can have team members, or you can have software that specializes in taking care of all that for you. right? And so like, what's really interesting to me is, you guys are really talking about modularity, and it feels like such a new idea in the Web3 space, but everywhere else, it already exists, right? In the Web2 space, no one says, let's build our own database, right? Everyone says, let's use MySQL or Postgres or some sort of like unstructured database that's open source or enterprise. But I mean, last time I checked, I don't think anyone built their own databases anymore, right? And so like, that's the same sort of theme here that I see that we're kind of evolving into. And so it's really exciting to see you guys at the forefront of that. And around that sort of theme, right? Like another sort of theme that I'm kind of seeing around L2s and like the emergence of L2s and the execution layer, right? Like with rollup as a service providers, it seems like L2s are easier to launch than ever. And so what sort of role does Celestia play in it?
So, well, first I want to just touch on what you said, which is about like modularity. One of the advantages is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Like, if you want to build something, it's like, oh, well, there's an off-the-shelf protocol that specializes in this, and I'll use that as a component, rather than having to build it from scratch myself. And I think this is but you can choose among those different options, so you have like a huge amount of like variety and flexibility. And then if you have something special that doesn't exist yet, you can go ahead and build that and customize it, which is sort of like what you guys did with your circuits. So that's like a huge unlock for developers, and will, I think, speed up the rate of innovation in the space, because you can try so many more experiments. Like in one single monolithic chain, you can only try one sort of like, I would say, arrangement of the different components. But in a modular stack, you can literally try in parallel thousands of different experiments of how to build your application. So I'm really excited about that. So now, in terms of the role of Celestia, in terms of making it easier to deploy rollups, well, so Celestia's functions, right, that it provides with data availability and consensus. Data availability is crucial to the security of rollups, because in order for a fraud-proof mechanism or a zk proofs to be secure, you need to ensure that the data behind those proofs was made available, was published. So first of all, it provides security out of the box. So you know, before, if you're launching an app chain like on Cosmos, you'd have to issue a token and stake it. You have to like derive your own security. The nice thing is you inherit security directly by building a rollup. The next piece is consensus, and consensus is about ordering. And so that's also something that Celestia provides to rollups, is a guarantee that once they post their blocks, those blocks are not going to be changed, and like the order of them will not be changed. And so that saves you from having to bootstrap a whole validator set of your own or consensus set, which can take a lot of time, and is like a huge amount, also a huge amount of ongoing operating overhead to maintain a new consensus network. So instead, you're borrowing both the security of data availability and the consensus of Celestia. So it really saves you that much time. Now, there's also a lot of other teams like rollup as a service teams who are kind of like system integrators. Like if you like borrowing like an analogy from other industries, where they take sort of the off-the-shelf components of these different modular protocols and then wrap them into sort of like an end product for a customer. And so I think the rollup as a service really also will play a big role in making it easy and very turnkey. And the end goal of the modular stack is to make it so that it's as easy to deploy a new rollup as it is to currently deploy a new smart contract.
Got it, thank you. So, that brings up 2 points. One is, when you're thinking about things such as like shared security, right? Like that's really powerful, because like at the end of the day with Manta Network, what we wanted to do from the outset was make it as easy as possible to develop and build and deploy zk applications, right? And so like that's where all of our time was spent thinking about, but we don't want to focus on the infrastructure side. Like we don't want to have to worry about the nodes and the validators and everything. And so having that ability to just tap into the shared security, I think is like extremely powerful, not just from from like Manta Network's perspective, but also like app chains, right? Because like at the end of the day, a lot of these applications now are really thinking, okay, I don't want to share these compute resources on the execution layer with all these other applications. I want my own sort of reserved environment. So I'm actually seeing a lot of trend moving in that direction. What are you guys seeing over at Celestia?
Yeah, I mean, so Celestia is very much aligned with the Cosmos ecosystem and their vision for app chains. Because we believe that the end state of any successful application is to become their own chain. Because like, it's fine to start as a smart contract, probably, because like, you know, as a smart contract on Ethereum, you have access to liquidity and users, and maybe you're testing things out and seeing how things will go. But then if you get traction, you're going to want to, and you're already going to have liquidity and users who are going to follow you, and then you're going to want to have the ability to customize your application for your specific use case, to optimize for fees, to make it so that your user experience is better, and also, frankly, because you'll be able to capture more value as your own chain. Because when you're building a smart contract, you seed a lot of the economic value to the underlying layer one, both the execution fees and potentially MEV. So I think like the end state of any successful application is an app chain. However, without something like Celestia and without rollups, deploying an app chain is still a lot of work. And because like we talked about before, you have to have a consensus network, you probably have to issue a proof of stake token and all that stuff. And so Celestia makes it very like turnkey and easy to build that. And so that's why we think we'll overall supercharge the app chain revolution in the long term. But we're also very bullish still and excited about general purpose, execution chains too, because they have an important role to play.
Yeah, I think in some respects, I see Manta kind of in the middle of all this, because on the one hand, we do want to be as general purpose as possible because we want to service that next generation of applications, and that next generation of applications really comes with zk-enabled features. I personally don't feel like we can't get to that stage without zk. But at the same time, the zk enablement itself is kind of a specific realm of application, at least today. And so I do see us both as like almost like an app chain of its own, specifically focused on zk, but at the same time enabling this next generation of developers, activity users through these zk-enabled features. I know we're probably out of time. I just have one really quick question for you, which is, it kind of goes around the idea of being able to deploy L2s very quickly, easily, spin them up. And when you talk about that, it really makes me think about cloud computing, because with cloud computing, you have servers that horizontally scale as you need them, right? Like, and I saw, Kyle from Multicoin recently tweeted about like the TPS and the scalability being able to be solved through like an L1 or an L2. But we don't see that in any other industry, right? Like, no other industry says, okay, we're going to solve this by making beefier machines, right? Everyone else says we're going to solve this by being able to scale it out to multiple machines that are communicating with one another. And so, like that's also, a really interesting value proposition on the data availability side connected with the L2 propagation side, right? Like, everyone's asking, are there too many L2s? But I think like this is kind of an experiment to see like, can we horizontally scale this to be a much better user experience? Yeah, like, are you guys thinking about the horizontally scalable side, or like, are you specifically focused on like just onboarding unique applications in the ecosystem?
You bring up a really good point. And first of all, I just want to say that it is important, like the work that Solana and some of these monolithic chains are doing to optimize execution or mempool like layers of their stack are very valuable innovations. I think they should be included in like the execution layer of modular stacks, or the shared sequencer like mempool layers of the modular stack. So I don't want to say that that's not a valuable approach. It does contribute to scaling. However, there's always going to be a limit to how beefy you can make a single machine, right? And so that's why we believe that, at the end of the day, you're going to need to have multiple rollups side by side. And so that's just from the scalability perspective, and also like customizability. Like, why would everyone want to run on the same server? Like, if you map it to how the way that Web 2 works, like, none of that makes sense. Like, if people want to have their own custom VMs, their own servers to run their own apps, and they want to be able to scale them up or scale them down. and like that's just not possible in a monolithic framework. So anyway, absolutely, like this is something that we think about a lot, and is like central to like our thesis of how we actually scale these systems to like the world. And there was something else I wanted to say, but I'm trying to remember like the other thing, the root of the question. Oh yeah, and related to cloud computing, I think this is like a really important metaphor for people to get to understand why modular blockchains are such a revolution. Is so in the Web 2 model, right? You have a data center which provides raw compute, right? It's just a resource that's sitting there, and someone's invested a lot to like build it out and make it available for people. And developers come to the data center, and basically launch a custom virtual machine for their application. And on demand, they can scale it up and down. And that's how most of like Web 2 apps work today. Now, and Celestia and so the modular stack is the equivalent of that in Web 3. But instead of having a data center, you have a data network, right? And it provides this raw resource of block space, right? It's sitting there waiting for people to tap into. And then blockchain developers come to that resource of Celestia, and they say, hey, I want to deploy a custom virtual blockchain, aka a rollup, with this type of execution environment, and they can scale it up and down depending on how much resources they need. You can even have like an ephemeral rollup. It doesn't have to persist. Like if you launch a new L1, you have to like maintain it forever, because the equivalent of launching a new L1 is building out your own little data center, like on-prem thing, right? Very few people do that because of the overhead costs of doing it. And yeah, it just everything makes sense. It's a more economic, scalable model for how to build these things.
Yeah, I think that the ephemeral model is such a novel concept in blockchain, because everything in blockchain we feel is immutable, right? But like I've actually been hearing a lot about these types of ephemeral models. Like one example is, when it becomes too expensive to mint an NFT directly on Ethereum, for example, you spin up an ephemeral L2, you mint it on that L2, bridge it over to ETH, and then shut down the L2. There's no other coin in it. So yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. With that being said, I think we're all out of time for this, and really appreciated your time as well, Nick. One of the things that we're doing right now is we're actually going to be launching Manta Pacific's mainnet, and so really excited to share this moment with Celestia as well. And so we're going to just do a quick celebration, cut the cake, and then continue the conversation.
Let's do it.
All right, great. This is the cake I was hoping for.
Wow, it's yummy.
Yeah, but there's no knife. Should we just?
I wish people could see the labeling. Well, I just want to say congrats to you guys for launching. You launched it before us, so I'm a little bit jealous.
We're waiting for you guys.
We'll be right behind you. And yeah, I mean, this is a big moment and breakthrough for the whole zk space. Nothing like Manta exists yet, so
thank you.
Forging frontiers. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Knife.
Okay. Here's your slice.
Oh, we have plates too.
I'm just gonna cut it in.
Go for it.
Yeah? Oh.
Yeah.
That's a tough cake.
Beautiful. Wait, is this edible? It looks edible.
It's edible.
It's edible. All right, I'm gonna do a cut. You're right. This is really kind of intense. Yeah. Cut one piece. I'm gonna go bigger than you, man. That's a big piece.
Everyone can try to taste, you know, it's actually So we're getting ready for our first panel of the day. Yeah, so to get the point in how All right, hey everyone. So while we're waiting, I know that many of you guys in the back are having some amazing conversations, so I feel really bad for cutting you off here. But you know, there's actually another room on the other side, so if you want to continue networking, please, you know, make your way to the exit, go out to the other side, and you'll be able to continue your conversation there. That way we can have these panels where people can hear a little bit better. Thank you.
So sorry for letting you guys waiting. Let's go to the first panel of the day, the future of intersection of zk and Modular. And the panel will include Victor, co-founder of Mansion Network, Vince, founder and CEO of zkLink, Jimmy, Yin, co-founder at Izumi Finance, Eduard, founder of zkX Protocol, Tommy, PR lead of Dodo, and Taylor Harris, head of community of DevOS.
Hello. Hi everyone. Okay, we can start. Thanks for everyone coming. I'm Victor, co-founder of Mansion Network, and it's great to see you. Know we have a zkDay in Singapore. It's the first time like zkDay came to Asia, and we hold several zkDay events before. And actually, right now, besides of the the VCs and all of the zkEVM projects, right now today we are pleasure to have a lot of applications, like building some like amazing projects, like for users actually like related to zk, and that's something really amazing, and especially on the DeFi side. That's like about the real money and all of this into zk. So like this is basically the this panel about, and it's mainly about DeFi and also like some I think like some like middleware related to zk, like OS. So maybe we can just start and let everyone introduce yourself.
Alright, I guess I'll get started then. So, my name is Taylor Harris. Like mentioned before, I'm head of community at DAppOS. So I guess a little bit about me. I am based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, for any of you who know where that is. I've been traveling a lot with DAppOS, so as much as I'd like to say I'm based in Salt Lake, I'm on the road a lot, which is awesome because I get to see new people, meet new faces, and all these different places. But basically, DAppOS is a Web3 operating protocol. What we do is we make dApps as user-friendly as Web2 and mobile apps. And recently, we've been taking the approach of intent-centric, so we want to be an intent-centric protocol. And before I jump into that, I know we have a few questions on that today, so I'll save my breath for the last few questions. So thanks for having me and looking forward to the discussion.
Hello guys, I'm Tommy. I'm the PR lead of Dodo. And basically what Dodo does is we are a decentralized exchange, and recently we just launched on, we are deploying on Manta as well, looking to deploy on more zk chains as well. And a little about me, I just joined the industry last year, and based in Canada, and been around Asia for a lot of conferences recently, so a lot of you guys might have seen me somewhere. So that's everything about me.
Hey, I'm Eduard, founder of zkEX. We're building a derivatives protocol within the zk rollup space. We've been working with Starknet for a long while, and now we're starting to work with ecosystems like Manta. We are building our own dedicated app chain that scales the order book in a decentralized way with a customized consensus algorithm. And we're also approaching, arbitrary computation and how we can scale arbitrary computation within the entire Ethereum ecosystem.
Hi guys, I'm Jimmy from Izumi Finance. And for Izumi, actually we are building multi-chain DApps and with unique features that one liquidity could work for both AMM and on-chain order book. And we have deployed on Manta testnet, and we are hoping to launch on the mainnet soon. Thanks for coming.
Hi everyone, this is Vince from zkDay. We're building an Ethereum maximal zk-centric layer 3 trading execution environment using zk snarks. Our aim is to unite the liquidities of the Ethereum layer 2 ecosystems. We're building the infrastructure for the next generation of decentralized trading products. We want our builders to focus on delivering a true seamless user experience, user-friendly products that the users that can onboard the next millions of traders from centralized platforms to decentralized platforms with liquidity combined, aggregated from Ethereum layer 2 ecosystems. And we abstract and simplify the developer experience and user experience for them by using zero-knowledge proofs. Cool. I think let's start the first question. I think the first one is about the liquidity. And liquidity, actually, we need to talk about the liquidity pattern. And the liquidity pattern employed by DApps have continuously evolved and improved in recent years. Many DApps based on the BM model nowadays incorporate a strategy from Izumi's DLAMM to some extent. And Dodo invented the PMM model. That's back in 2 or 3 years before, right? And can you summarize the different liquidity pattern that's currently existing among DApps, and what trade-offs have been made between different liquidity patterns? Maybe this from Jimmy?
Yes, sure. I think liquidity, especially for on-chain liquidity, is a very exciting topic for the chains. Since DeFi summer, we all know that Compound is a Uniswap, SushiSwap bootstrap the liquidity for the first wave, and they use the X times Y equals K model, which is quite simple, maybe not that capital efficiency, but quite simple and transparent to enable fair launch and also automated market making for altcoins like meme coins. So, but as the time going, we need to get some more lasting organic way to let the on-chain liquidity stay and generating enough real yields for the LPs to make the whole system lasting and efficient. So that's why for Izumi, we research and develop the first DLAMM, which is discretized liquidity AMM model to serve for the on-chain trading. So first of all, it is a fully on-chain trading protocol, which is the same as the Uniswap, SushiSwap. So it's fully non-custodian, non-censorship, and very safe. And second is that the DLMM compared with Uniswap is rate, you can think like it is an upgraded version of Uniswap is rate, which can like use one liquidity working for both the AMM swap and also the on-chain order book. With the discretized liquidity, which means you could put your orders on 1,000, like for Ethereum to USDC, to 1,800, 1,801, and 2 and 3. So you can enjoy a similar user experience like on the Binance or on the centralized exchange, but all of your actions will be recorded and executed on chain. We believe that with the layer 2 technology development, the gas fee will be lower and lower, and also the execution speed will be higher and more secure. So hoping to see the on-chain Binance happens on-chain, and it will be a good thing for the whole crypto community to make it more robust and to make it to be more secure and transparent. So this is some points about DLMM, which is the AMM plus on-chain order book.
Yeah, so basically, my screen is really short. As you guys know about AMM, basically ensures a constant reserve of product. It does also have high slippage as a result, and basically what PMM does is it reduces the slippage and impermanent loss by pricing curve, by adjusting the pricing curve dynamically. And yeah, we have more information on our docs on the Dorothy website.
Liquidity is everything that the traders cares about, apart from the cost. In terms of user experience, and there are two categories of liquidity we'll talk about. And then Izumi Finance and Dodo we are working on AMMs, and there's also another type of liquidity, the order books. It's interesting that Jimmy mentioned about on-chain balance. I think we're also trying to help the rise of the decentralized finance, as finance is the order book model, right? So there's also liquidity patterns on centralized platforms, and on the order books, the capital efficiency on the order book is actually still much more efficient than compared with AMMs. I think that is the reason why today we see a lot of teams trying to bring order book models to the DeFi users. We don't really have to give up custody if we want to trade on order books. It's much more user-friendly compared with AM, to be honest, because today user AM still has a high user entry barrier, because you need first of all have install an EOA wallet. Smart contract wallet is not yet user ready, but it is coming soon. And together with the AA wallets, with the social accounts and plus order books, or concentrated liquidity models of the innovations happening in the industry is going to be liquidity to the next level. We think that the AMMs and order books are both important, and they will thrive the next cycle. And ultimately, we believe that order books are for
professional traders, for high frequency traders, for traders that has needs to employ strategies, algos, and AMMs are much more retail friendly when you don't have to really care about the slippage, because if you trade $10,000, you don't really care about the $5, and you just need a very simple user experience. And I think AMMs can offer that, and also AMS is more friendly for long tail tokens. Because essentially, if you want to market make an order book, it takes capital, it takes market making capital. At the same time, there is a lot of professional skills required. You need to work with market makers most of the time, and it's a lot easier to provide liquidity and incentivize your community to provide liquidity and the AMM model.
If I can add something here, I think you all making very right, interesting, analysis here. If we take a step back, we can think of Ethereum evolving towards just being sort of, the meta chain that secures this entire ecosystem of L2s, right? And you might have heard of, Pruden sharding, future sharding, the whole EIP around data blocks that optimizes for, L2s posting proofs back on chain on L1. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because we don't see that, DeFi evolving towards, staying on L1, but rather evolving towards L2s, where the monetary value and the NFTs and trading activity will happen. But if you think in the case of scaling order books, you start to compare with, the centralized crypto or actual Web2, you see that, Binance does 6 million TPS on a peak day, right? In no way we can compare 6 million TPS to the TPS we get on an L2 with an AMM at this point in time. So if you have to cater to millions of users, you actually need to think beyond L2s, and how do you build additional infrastructure and layers that work in tandem with the L2s through self-custody and account abstraction, so the monetary value is safe within the L2 level, but you can still scale the entire, application and to cater to, the next wave of the so-called billion users, right, that we all talk about coming into DeFi. And so this new layer, some people call it L3s, dedicated app chains, instant rollups. There's a whole bunch of technology being built, but we think that area will be key in order to actually scale solutions and make them, actually, feasible for a mass retail market, which is what we haven't achieved yet. So the experts, visions, like all of us, we're still going to be using AMMs at the L2 and L1 level probably in the near future. But if we really want to scale these solutions forward, you still need certain efficiencies that come with, higher scalability solutions, decentralized order books, and so on.
Cool. Thanks, Eduard. So maybe we can start with the second question. How can zk improve composability and interoperability among DeFi protocols? What are some example scenarios? Maybe we can start from China.
Yeah, I'll jump to this one first. I'll keep it short because I know we don't have a lot of time to go over. But basically, I think one of the first scenarios that I think of would be cross-chain interoperability, right? I think this is something that, although it is relatively simple, it's something that we always face, regardless of which chain you prefer to work off. At some point, you're going to have to move cross-chain, and I think in one way that's where zk can come in and help. That's where zk comes in. Yeah, cross-chain interoperability.
Yeah, so part of the reason why a lot of people are in DeFi is because they want low risk and also privacy as well as efficiency. So something that zk provides is just lower gas fee. That's obviously something that it's very important for a lot of DeFi users. And then also the fact that zk is able to prove something is done without actually reviewing more information about others. So and this is also important for a lot of DeFi users because privacy is also very important in DeFi. And at the same time, it could help with governance in terms of tallying votes without actually revealing everyone's identity. So I think those are really important points about zk in terms of
Okay, so seems that we're the only infra projects here, so I will be taking this question. So I'll start with interoperability. How zk can help interoperability? Okay, we have seen some other projects building zk bridges, and zk as a multi-chain focused project. We're also very focusing on this area, but we're doing this in a different approach. We're building directly our infra. We're deploying our contract directly to multiple layer 2s, including layer 1s, right? So, and then the application builders can choose the selection of the networks that they actually want to provide to their end users. So you say one application can come to us and say, oh, we want Ethereum layer 2s, everything, including zk rollups and OP rollups. And another application will say, okay, I want layer 2s. At the same time, currently, business reasons tell me that we also want the liquidity from BNB chain Polygon, because there are still a lot of users, still a lot of project managers and inactive, and say, okay, this is fine, we can do that for you too. And some projects say we strictly just want derive security from Ethereum, so we want to inherit the 100% security of Ethereum. Okay, so then you can deploy to Ethereum layer 1 and zk rollup layer 2s, which strictly derive 100% security from Ethereum mainnet. So yeah, this is one option they have. And how we do this is that once you choose the set of your networks, and then you have zk pools posting the transactions to each of the networks, and then users can trade in one user interface of the assets using liquidities abstracted from these different ecosystems. So say if you now are trading on 10 different zk rollups, or maybe you right now 7, right? You need probably more than maybe you need several, maybe 4 or 5 different wallets to manage your tokens on different ecosystems. So on the zkDay stacks, you just need one wallet. This is simplified user experience. Simplified user experience is very important, extremely important for mass adoption. Yeah, one step simpler, and then you get more users. The more complex you get, the less users you will get in the end. We're doing this interoperability not by allowing users to transfer funds from one channel. Of course, you can use zkDay stacks to transfer a token from blockchain A or rollup A to rollup B. This is how you can also use finance for, right? But that's not ultimately why you want to build this. Ultimately, you want to simplify this multi-chain experience by allowing users to stay on one product, one user interface, and they forget about the chains, they forget about rollups. I think this is the interoperability that we want. But if you do want to move your funds among different chains, networks, you can do that. You can do so. With the zk Infra as well. We'll have a liquidity rebalance product we call zkEVM Zhang. They can incentivize users to do transfers and earn money. They are incentivized to do so, to rebalance liquidity for certain applications, because some applications may have more shortage on one certain network when users are moving to that network suddenly from, for example, from Stacknet suddenly to Manta, right? A lot of users want to suddenly withdraw the funds to Manta because there's a wonderful, amazing project on Manta, then there's a very good opportunity. A lot of users want to go there, use that product, and then they want to withdraw their funds from Stacknet or zkSync, for example, and they go to Manta, then they can do that too. And then some users, underlying users, will use zkEVM Zhang to rebalance liquidity, because you need to essentially have the liquidity in the smart contract first to allow users to do that withdraw. So with zero-knowledge proofs, where you do everything in a transparent way, and also in a way that it can be proved with zero-knowledge proofs. So the total sum of funds are strictly equivalent. So you're going to move liquidity from you, first of all, need to have liquidity in CL. So this is another product that we're providing. And for example, Izumi, I think you can use this feature as well. This is composability, right? So if you have liquidity that can be called by other products, this is composability. I think there's a lot more zk projects that will offer
different solutions. It's slightly different in terms of interoperability and composability. But honestly speaking, I think in our use case, we are very difficult focused, but at the same time, limit other books for focus. So we're actually losing composability compared with AMMs because it's harder to call liquidity from other books compared with AMM. So we're happy to learn about your thoughts on this composability issue.
I may add one sentence and also correct for Vince. First, I think for zk technology, actually, especially for the layer 2 and rollups, I think two things are most important for the traders. One is security, and second is the efficiency. For security, like for with the zero knowledge proof, there could be more possibilities to get the fund more safe instead of like running into some corner cases to get your token stolen by some hackers, or when you deposit it in a like centralized bridge to bridge money from the mainnet to the rollup. With the zk bridge or zk technology-based bridge, it can be easier to do that. Just ensure that the money trading on your rollup is very safe. And second is efficiency. Like if you Vince said, if you trader, sometimes you want to do some arbitrage and rebalance moves, and you need to move from money from one chain to another. So with this kind of the zk type of the maybe it's called zk jump or like zk bridge or what this kind of the technology, it can be faster than the like the traditional OPO lab, like is about 14 days challenging time period. So it can be, you can make the use of your money in a more efficient way. So I think these two things are quite important to imply zk technology into the DeFi.
Yeah, I'm going to say something controversial, which is composability is overrated. And I mean it in a good way. Composability matters to us, the people in this room, right? It matters to the builders, to the core users of this ecosystem. But to the end user, that doesn't really matter to a certain extent, right? They just want to have easy access, trade, use products, have passive income. So therefore, composability is something that is important to us, the ones that we are building and using these tools. But actually, to the end user, we need to offer them something that has already the composability built into the product, right? We cannot expect the end user in Indonesia, in Vietnam, or India to actually go and take their LP tokens, port them over to another ecosystem, use something else with those LP tokens, and then use that as collateral to take out a loan, and all the things that for us might be some day-to-day stuff, but for them that's just out of the way. So the fact that we're able to simplify this experience into some form of structured products, passive income products, that will be very important for adoption. And that's where I think, talking about low gas fees is also probably not a differentiating factor in the long term. It is for us who are now using these chains, but for mass adoption, we really probably need to start thinking what's really the value add that we want to offer to these users. And I think that's, probably some more of an ecosystem effort that we start thinking more, not just to making products just for us and for our enjoyment, but also for the long term and for this wider adoption in the future.
Well, thank you. Right, maybe we can, besides of the liquidity and composability, and we can talk something extremely new stuff. This is like intent. Intent is super hot topic nowadays, and basically, what do you guys think modular and the intent in our current DeFi? And would the intent be a good way to solve problem of fragment cross-chain liquidity currently? Maybe we can start from kind of.
Yeah, so I'll jump in with intent. So basically, it is a new topic, right? Everything in this industry that's new, every new idea, every new advancement in technology needs time to grow before you can actually understand it. But the way that I see intent at DAppOS, we are taking the intent-centric approach. Basically, rather than like account abstraction, where you really focus on the transaction process, intent is focusing on the desired outcome of the user. So to give like a shitty analogy, basically we're sitting in a nightclub, right? And during the daytime, you're able to see all the lights, all the sounds, you know, the people working behind the scenes. But at night, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dance, I'm gonna have fun, I'm gonna drink. And so I don't see what's going on behind the scenes. All I want is like the desired outcome. So I think that's the way I see intent-centric, and I think it's here to stay.
I think there are many other words that you can translate intent. I think the first word that comes to me is abstraction. Besides account abstraction, there is also chain abstraction, which is very important actually for mass adoption. Because there are already dozens of chains. There will be hundreds, maybe thousands of rollups. You know, imagine if you have to jump from one chain to another and one rollup to another. But each time you use a different application, this will be very pain for users. So we definitely need to abstract this part for user adoption. I think this is also our areas of focus: how to abstract the chains and the rollups. Users won't feel the pain when they have to frequently switch between different apps. Also, account abstraction is a very big part as well. I think layer 2 and the layer 3 applications want to be as successful as we imagine to be without account abstraction. When users need account system, they don't need like EOA wallet where they have to all worry about the seed phrase all the time. And actually the learning cost for this part is also higher than we could imagine, because we are as crypto builders, as OGs, you probably already adopted, but as a newcomer from Web 2, and when you have to educate them, they can go through this process and it take days, maybe take weeks for them to actually understand how it works. And to convince them is not difficult. It's not an easy job. We actually need a account system as intuitive and as simple that you can go to maybe your aunties, your uncles, and they will learn how to use it. And that's a type of user experience we actually need to deliver. There are also other aspects of abstractions too, and I think everything together is for user experience. Simplified user experience is the key for adoption.
Yes, I may like to share some thoughts about intent and modular from Izumi's view. Actually, from my side, I think for the supply side, if we want to deploy more modular-based blockchain, it's a good way to reduce the cost and also increase the efficiency. And all of them, just like we said, is behind the scene. So users don't need to care about who is working on which part, like who's working for RPC, who is working for the consensus or no service. So from the supply side, if we could make more professional jobs together to put some different companies or groups or talents efforts together to provide a holistic solution, it is a way to increase the efficiency. But from the demand side, from the user side, if they could be easier for them to understand, actually users don't mind offering more gas or offering more fees. So just like the users be the leaders, they can just tell, what I want to do, and all the solvers or all the things behind could be solved by competitive, different groups to work for his orders. That would be a way to provide better service and user experience. So it's a way to lower the user barrier for maybe next tens of millions or billions users come on board and to expand the whole ecosystem.
Cool. So, thank you for sharing. I think, basically modular really can reduce the gas fee compared to the existing layer 2, like maybe go down 80% or even 90%. The intent is like just like Lin said, abstraction is basically make user have better experience. I think we are about to end, and the last question, basically, we can just use maybe one sentence to share like what will be the the recent product progress and future plan. I mean, besides release of Meta and about the midnight launch and what else on your roadmap.
Yeah, so for Dodo, the next step is to deploy on more zkGs as well. And we also have Dodo V3 coming up next. More updates will be on the video way.
Alright, yeah, DAppOS version 2, beta version just launched last week, so go to dappos.com, we have the links to everything if you want to follow along.
Yeah, for zkX, we released our app chain last week, which is an omni-chain derivatives infrastructure that can work with Manta as well as Starknet and other L2s. So yeah, if you want to know more about us, search us on Twitter. We're over there. More announcements coming this week, tomorrow, and next week. So stay tuned.
For Izumi, as its name, it means the liquidity, the spring of water in Japanese. Actually, our next plan is to make the liquidity more efficiency for the on-chain trading. So we will promote the shared liquidity program to make you can stake LP for one chain, but earn the trading fees and incentives and benefits from multi-chains. And it's also a way to bootstrap the liquidity for some promising new chains to let them to have the essential liquidity to bootstrap. Yes.
There are 3 updates that I want to share with the audience. The first update is developer focused. We just launched Mainnet Alpha in July, and we're live on 10 mainnets, 6 layer 2s and 4 layer 1s. And there are 3 applications that users can use now, including a multi-chain order book text, that provides pair and spot trading in one user interface with unified account and perform no margin enabled. And the second type is RW derivatives. Basically, you can trade real-world access to derivative, perpetualize everything, and it's a totally new user experience. And the third product, as mentioned, is zkJump. It can help you bridge your assets and also can help developers to rebalance the liquidities among different layer 2 and layer 1s. And we will go to mainnet beta in about 4 weeks time, and we will bring the perpetual contract trading live on mainnet beta, and then we will enable NFT features and to allow builders to build more feature-rich applications using our multi-role, multi-chain infra based on zk Snark's security guarantee on the line.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward. We can start from here. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for shedding light on the exciting possibility that this intersection presents. And next, I'm pleased to introduce the next panel, Intersecting the Modular Infrastructure Stack. And please welcome Cem Ozer, co-founder of Sovereign, Kenny Lee, co-founder of Manta Network, Mary Liu, business development manager at Celestia, Jiaheng Zhang, director of operations at Polymer DAO, Dorothy, head of growth of Outlayer, and last but not least, Antonio from Polyhedra.
Cem, if you're in the audience, you are needed up here. Are you the guy running right now? Wow.
Take your time, take your time.
Even more charming in person. Hi, Cem.
Okay, let's get started.
Hi everyone, I'm Dorothy, head of growth at Modular. Today I'm very honored to have a very talented group of people pushing the boundaries in modularity and scaling. So first of all, please give us a self-intro. Tell us who you are, what you're building, and what is your project focus on right at the moment. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jem. I'm from Sovereign, and at Sovereign, what we're building is Sovereign SDK, which is a rollup framework.
Hi, I'm Johanna. I come from Polymer Labs. What we're building is modular interoperability, expanding IBC to all chains.
Hi everyone, I'm Kenny. I'm one of the co-founders of Manta Network, and we are building a modular layer 2 to enable zk applications.
Hi, I'm Mary. I work on strategic partnerships at Celestial Labs. We are the first modular blockchain network in that our blockchain focuses entirely on data availability.
Hi, I'm Antonio from Polygon Network. We provide trustless and efficient cross-chain interoperability protocol powered by zkP technology.
We actually have very spicy questions today. So put on your seatbelt. Are you ready? The first question is super spicy. It's on a highly debated topic, smart contract rollup versus sovereign rollup. I know there's Camp Vitalik, Camp Ethereum, and there's Camp Celestia and sovereign rollup. So I'm now forcing you to pick a side here, but please tell us what's the difference between sovereign rollup and smart contract rollup, and tell us why do you think there's a reason for using sovereign rollup?
This might be controversial, but the question is spicy, so I guess it's fine. I don't think there's much of a difference between sovereign rollups and smart contract rollups. At the end of the day, the difference is, are you bridging back to the layer 1 or not? And you might have that bridge, you might not have that bridge. I don't think it impacts the product or the user experience too much. So I think this is a subject that gets exaggerated a little bit, but at the end of the day, when users are building their applications as rollups, I don't think there's going to be a lot of focus on if it's sovereign or smart contract rollup.
I think there's a lot of differences, and it's really unique in the way that people approach it. But from a Polymer perspective, we approach them all similarly. So I'm trying to say that we support all rollups the same way. We're going to be able to be used on all chains by all rollups. We're really excited by the modular blockchain pieces all together and how interoperability can be extended to everyone using it.
Yeah, and I think talking about the roll-up and kind of figuring out which team you're on is a little bit of a interesting position that we have in Web3, because nowhere else in any other industry, in any other tech sector, do people care so much about infrastructure as much as we do in blockchain, right? Are you Ethereum based? Are you not Ethereum based? Are you, Solana? Are you not Solana? Right? No one cares about, are you Amazon AWS or Google Cloud? Right? No one cares if are you Ericsson or are you Huawei? Well, I guess, right now people care if you're Ericsson or Huawei, but normally people don't, right? And so we take that same philosophy over at Manta. We don't really focus specifically on being so concentrated on pushing out the value proposition of the infrastructure or the infrastructure stack, right? That's definitely very important to us, and that's exactly why we have partnered with Celestia for the modularity side for data availability. But at the same time, right, one of the missions we came in going into this was to make sure that zk application development is achievable and easy to access, easy to build, easy to deploy for any sort of developer out there. And right now, the biggest ecosystem of developers is EVM based. And so we are very much tailored towards that. Not because, we're focused on some specific cult or team, but more so because, we want to kind of push that adoption. And that's where all the development and adoption is.
Entirely agree. I would just highlight some key kind of technical differences. I know Kenny just emphasized the overemphasis on caring too much about technical differences. But in sovereign rollups, transactions are verified by the sovereign rollup nodes itself, whereas smart contracts settle back to a different settlement layer. And then sovereign rollups maintain their own settlement layer. I think one of the key differences that we really believe in supporting the growth of sovereign rollups is that sovereign rollups maintain the freedom to fork or not, so they preserve whether or not the community accepts the underlying updates of the base layer blockchain.
So here at Polymeter Network, we love all the rollups, different ways of rollups. We love sovereign rollups, we love smart contract rollups, we love optimistic rollups, we love zk rollups, because we are doing interoperability. So for us, we don't want to, well, we love the debate in how we should construct different types of rollups. And our belief that, well, different types of approach has different advantages in different fields. So eventually, at the end of the day, users will be able to choose which rollup they like, which chain they like, which layer 2 they like, which layer 1 they like. But what we are offering here is we want to, our developers and our users to have the choice, always have the choice. For example, if you deploy on one chain at a time, but then you'll find you're already a smart contract rollup developer. One day you'll find sovereign rollup is much better in some perspectives. Will help you easily migrate everything, your data, your assets from your current chain to a sovereign rollup chain. And that's our mission for interoperability.
I guess whether we use sovereign rollup or smart contract rollup, the end goal is to make the blockchain more modular. And that brings us our second question. How can zk help us to achieve better modularity, or in the process of making all the blockchains more modular, how can we integrate zk technology better?
Starting with the first question, in the modular world, you can imagine both fraud-proof based designs, optimistic rollups, and zk rollups. But what really sets out like zk rollups apart is the fact that you can aggregate these proofs and basically create a mesh network of all the applications, and you can have a bridging logic or messaging logic that's similar to the smart contracts out there. The Cosmos had a lot of problems with sending messages across applications because there's no multi-hop bridge system that's working right now. Like the IBC, I don't think that it's working yet, and the bridges are quite sparse, and that results in an ecosystem that's unable to has a lot of composability. Whereas with in a world built with zk rollups, all these applications can message each other quite easily. So that makes building applications way easier for developers. So, yeah.
I don't think zk is necessarily a fundamental aspect of the modular blockchain thesis, but it does help because you can, for each of the pieces of the modular blockchain, you can then apply zk however you would like it. You don't need the entire blockchain, the monolithic blockchain, to use zk, right? So that's a really cool aspect of it, I think. From a Polymer standpoint, analogous to the modular blockchain thesis, we look at the modular interoperability thesis. And what we've done is pulled out the state layer, and we've created this hybrid verification proof ability with optimistic and zk proof. So that's one way that we've used zk in our modular interoperability problem. So.
Got it. Yeah. So there's been a lot of talk about zk more so on the snarks type rollup situation. We use zk more so on the application layer, and when I think about modularity and the whole philosophy behind it, we we're kind of talking about this with Nick just a second ago, right? To me, it sounds like an as-a-service model, right? Essentially, what happens is now you don't have to build everything yourself. You can not purchase, but use other components, plug them into your application, and ultimately deliver value on demand. And so for us, right, when it comes to zk, especially on the application layer, what we're really trying to do with Pacific is to offer zk as a service. So if you're a Solidity developer, chances are you probably don't know too much about cryptography, compiling circuits, using CirCom, et cetera, and that actually is a very big barrier to entry to enable some type of feature that is probably very critical for you to deliver your value. And so instead of trying to learn how to build these circuits yourself, you can now use these circuits as a service type model. So zk as a service, we call it the universal circuit. And I think like that is also philosophically kind of the same approach in terms of modularity, except not exactly on the infrastructure layer, but more so on the application layer. And so I think there's a lot of room to grow also for the developer ecosystem when it comes to modularity and thinking about the components that can truly be plug and play to make it as easy as possible for a developer to build, deploy, and just scale their applications really quickly.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see nascent areas on the market develop, especially on zk-proof marketplaces. I've heard that a number of zk hardware accelerators are working on supporting proof marketplaces as well. At Celestia, we've looked at and continue to monitor emerging types of new technology. We've been really fortunate to have ecosystem partners that have worked in advancements in zk infrastructure. So to highlight a few, Sovereign Labs is collaborating with Reciro to create infrastructure SDKs for zk rollups, right? Manta is specifically focused on zk application layers. It's been phenomenal to see like all these different types of infrastructure that support more advanced forms of zk technology develop. And at the moment, we're focused on mainnet launch, but continue to work with all these ecosystem teams to ensure that, you know, at Celestia, like we stay at the forefront of the market as well.
So since we're talking about the zk and modular here, when we were writing our zk bridge paper like 5-6 years ago, when we were still at UC Berkeley, we actually thought of like zk bridge is actually a part of a bigger ecosystem. When we invented zk bridge, it is supposed to be a plug and play feature into the current Web3 world, where if you're seeing polyhedral collaboration with layer 0, you may wondering, hey, you are both doing bridge. How does that work? So actually, zk fundamentally is an algorithm. And that algorithm actually can be part of any bigger system. So if you look at the bridge, when we're using zk, we're actually using zk as a proof of consensus, where we are able to generate zkP for different consensus of different blockchains. Whether it's layer 1 or layer 2 doesn't have consensus, but we have other workarounds for layer 2 proofs. So basically, we have that proof ready, and that proof can be used in any part of the Web3 ecosystem, where you want to build DeFi on it, you want to build GameFi on it, you want to build games or any other cross-chain messaging protocol. You can always use zk as a part of your system. So zk natively in Web3 setting, it is a modular, it's a module of a bigger system where we use zk to accelerate your finality. We use zk to make your system cheaper. We use zk to replace the traditional third-party trustee setup to make it trustless and more secure. So zk fundamentally as a technology, we think it is modular, and Polyhedral network is helping to make zk proof available to anyone, to any developers, to any community members, to any our end users.
I guess for a lot of non-technical people, sometimes we'll mistake zk technology from zk rollups because they just come out, they just show up so often. We think zk equates with zk rollups, but in reality, zk is just a proof technology that can be used across the infra layer, application layer, across all aspects in the blockchain industry. So I do think this panel clarifies a lot of the questions we had. So moving on to the next question, we're all aware that we're still in a bear market. I hope this is a kind of a consensus. Unfortunately, it's still a bear market being questioned, and we do see a lot more infra projects than application projects. And some people would comment that there are way more infra projects in the market than applications, and all these infra projects are kind of acting like VC funds to hopefully get more projects to deploy on their infra, but we don't see them being very successful. So what's your take on this? I guess this is another spicy question. In your opinion, would the advancement in the infra layer really just naturally attract better applications, or we need to do actually a lot more work than just having better tech?
I think infra and application goes in cycles. So like DeFi summer and like the following like bull market, we have lots of applications of similar sort, to be honest, because they were based on very limited infra. But now we're seeing like so many infrastructure projects, people working on very similar things from time to time. And I think the natural like response will be again another period of like lots of new applications. And I think it's natural, and it's just like how new technology like works. Yeah, that's.
I love this question because I get it all the time from friends and people I talk to now in the space of why are you still in crypto, right? Like, why are you building infrastructure? Look at the bear market, what's happening. And I think a good analogy is like, if we built a car, if we built engines, which is like blockchain technology, this amazing new technology is engineered, but what do we do with it? Everyone takes it and builds a different car. Maybe a 10-foot wide car that doesn't fit on the roads we have today. Maybe a too small car that doesn't follow safety standards. But what I think is cool about it is that now that we've seen all the applications, we can take a step back and build infrastructure in the way that is necessary to facilitate a better environment. So for instance, at Polymer, we view IBC, the Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol, as kind of like the standards, like the rules of the road. They established around the world that red means stop, and green means go. And now Polymer, we're taking those standards and creating the network of roads so that everyone can move in the same way, in a safe way, so that when applications then come back in the cycles that Jem was referring to, everyone is now moving in a better and more facilitated, regulated manner.
I like the car analogy. I think, there is a lot of infrastructure, especially nowadays, right? When you look at roll-up as a service models and how easy it is to deploy infrastructure, I think we're only going to have more and more of that. There are advantages to that, but before I get into that, I did say there is a lot of infrastructure, but I do think that we are still lacking in infrastructure innovation. And I think we're going to see a lot of that lack of infrastructure innovation now that infrastructure itself has become infrastructure as a service. And so anyone who has been in the cloud computing space or is a system architect or is DevOps know exactly what I'm talking about, right? When you use Amazon AWS, you spin up a cloud server and it's all the same cloud server, right? So like having that homogeneous structure allows for, in the future, I think, further breakthrough innovation around horizontal scalability, which I think is pretty important. But then in terms of the innovation itself, right, like, and it's the same kind of question we get at Manta, which is like, okay, so Manta's launching an L2, so what? Everyone's launching an L2, right? And so like what we really focus on is like, where's that innovation angle? And where we see the next 5 to 10 years trending is having that zk enablement for all applications to really hit that next generation application. And in order to do that, you have to make zk development as easy as possible. And so that's where a lot of the innovation that we focus on comes in. And I do hope that despite the fact that infrastructure is becoming a commodity, there is a lot more infrastructure innovation because it's desperately needed.
Yeah, so I would kind of start off with the comment that I think the last 2 years were certainly ridiculous. I think that amassing large ecosystem funds from layer ones to invest in projects that faded away after 6-8 months, that was just ultimately like ridiculous and probably a consequence of how easy it was to raise venture capital funding over the last 2 years. What we've chosen to focus on at Celestia is to look for like key strategic partnerships with applications that are building applications that uniquely need roll-up infrastructure. So we've been really fortunate to have organic partners come to us, really appreciate the work that we focus on, and then build net new innovative applications, such as, to highlight a few, Argus Labs, Argus is a gaming world engine in which on-chain games can deploy on shards that are functionally blockchains that have a higher tick rate than could ever be supported on Ethereum, right? Ethereum could never support fully on-chain games in its state right now because it's just too expensive. So being able to work with like these key strategic partnerships that can really uniquely take advantage of roll-up infrastructure, that's certainly what we look for. So right now, like we look for an initial set of options protocols, fully on-chain games. These folks who like really understand why they're choosing to deploy on a new type of infrastructure. I also think that as more of these application-specific rollups come to market, there's a merging point between like what is an application and what is infrastructure. I think I had a moment working with a rollup team that's experimenting with on-chain inference, where I was like, wow, like you guys are functionally like an application. There's like this merging point between like applications and infrastructure, because like as application-specific rollups continue to deploy, it almost becomes indistinguishable between like what's a rollup and what's an application.
Yeah, can't agree more with that. So we're seeing application-specific rollups. Rollups are built for applications. Infrastructures are built for applications. So the key at the end of the day, so we have a lot of infrastructure here. Some may fail, some may continue to survive. But the key for which one to survive is if there are applications using our infrastructure. Because we build infrastructure, Polyhedra, we build a lot of different infrastructures, including zk Bridge. So one key metric that we're looking at when we are thinking of we want to build a new infrastructure project is, are there that many applications on the market that want to use your infrastructure? And is it easy for the application to integrate with your infrastructure? And what does your infrastructure bring to the applications? I'm going to circle it back on the zk topic because zk is hard to understand. Well, people are marketing where zk companies will build zk Bridge, but concepts are good concepts. However, there are too many concepts in the market where it's hard to differentiate from only a concept level if an infrastructure is good. Different infrastructure projects claim they have different advantages. They have all those different concepts. It's really too much for investors, for consumers, for end users. But one thing we're looking for as an infrastructure company is that good infrastructure does bring advantage, not from the concept level, but from the application level. For example, zk Bridge. People are talking about zk Bridge, but it's maybe only very few knows what zk Bridge brings, what zk brings. So one example, because I'm in the product segment of the company, when we go out to talk about partnerships with using our zk Bridge, key metrics here, we talk about finality. So you don't need to understand zk, but you understand finality. How soon can your transaction be delivered? We have significant advantage using zk compared to optimistic rollups. Zk rollups has much faster finality time. That's one metric. And also, when talking about Bridge, when you're using zk Bridge, we never persuade our company saying, hey, we have very good zk technology. We tell them zk Bridge is 80% cheaper than traditional bridge. And that's how they want to use it. It's not because they want to use zk in their marketing proposal, but zk does bring good benefits to our partners. So, and also efficiency. We let them know like how efficient zk Bridge can be. Let them know how cheap zk Bridge can be. That's the true advantage of good infrastructure. So come back to the infrastructure topic. There are too many infrastructures in the market. People are saying there are more infrastructure than applications. And it's because applications are still in the process of sourcing good infrastructure. It's because it's very easy to make a concept, but it's very hard to really implement the concept and bring that to the application level. And that's what we are focusing on. We want to bring the infrastructure, we want to bring true benefits of applying real good infrastructure with our application, and we want to make that adoption in the very good settings. For example, we are achieving over 100,000 transactions every day on zk Bridge because our partners know when you are using zk Bridge, it's cheap, it's fast, and they don't need to know about zk because the infrastructure ultimately brings real benefits to the applications who want to adopt our infrastructure.
Thank you. That's a very long and exciting answer. I probably know your answer for our next question. What's the application you're most excited about zk Bridge? Sorry for front running. So our next question is is there any particular application that you're excited about, or just give us an application sector if you don't have a particular answer.
To give a sector, I think, given that we've seen a lot of problems with centralized exchanges, FTX, the companies like Celsius, these finance applications, centralized finance applications have created a bad name for crypto. I think it's super interesting for new application teams that are leveraging rollups to build very low latency applications that mimic these centralized applications, but in a verifiable and censorship resistant way. I think that's what will make a lot of impact soon in this modular world. So some people call it centralized CDFI, centralized finance, but you're able to get low latency, great user experience in a censorship resistant way, which is quite interesting for teams that are coming from the Web 2 world.
One of the things we're probably most excited about is cross-chain liquidity. Related to DeFi Summer, where it was so hard to move your money from point A to point B to point B. So at Polymer Labs, we're powering a project like Catalyst, and they're building cross-chain liquidity, which I think will be very exciting and create such a better user experience for all of us in this room who probably tried to bridge things from one place to another.
Yeah, so I keep saying zk being the next generation for enabling on-chain applications, but let me give you an example. And so when you're playing a game of chess or checkers, right? We're at the table. It's a chess game, 2-player game. It's a perfect information game, and what I mean by that is that everything that you see on the board, everyone else can see. And so if we were to put this on chain, then we can have the state of the game on chain at any point in time, and that's okay, right? And so I can say knight to d7, and you'll know exactly where my knight goes. And so both of us, we have this perfect transparency. But then there are imperfect information games. So how do you put a game like poker on chain? Right? And so when you think about that, it's okay, we have to shuffle the cards. We have to agree that the way that the cards are shuffled are the way it was supposed to be. And when I deal the card to you, you're supposed to have the card that you were supposed to be dealt, right? Everything was done fairly. But at the same time, we're saying, okay, that is your card, but I have no idea what that card is. So it's almost like a proof itself, right? And so how do you put a game like that on chain? If I were to query the state of a game on the blockchain, I could see all the cards, where they are, what hand you have, what hand I have, and it defeats the whole purpose of these types of imperfect information games. And so in order to build these next generation games, such as these imperfect information games like poker, any card game, board games, right, like League of Legends on chain, right, you have to have some type of zero knowledge provability, as well as using things like homomorphic encryption, but too many details. Point is, that's what a next generation application looks like, right? Things that just can't exist today. Oh yeah, and that project is called zk Hold'em. Sorry, that's the app. Yeah.
I think that if you ask anyone on the Celestia team what their favorite roller project application is, everyone will have a different answer. For me, I'm extremely boring, so my favorite applications that are being worked on right now is via one of the rollups as a service projects that we work with. So rollups as a service projects, they can take any rollup framework, post data to any data availability layer, like Celestia, and then work directly with the business itself to handle the protocol engineering aspects. So in particular, two of the companies that I like the most are a health tech startup that is tokenizing patient data, and then also a sports engagement, fan engagement platform that's using digital collectibles to engage fans of sports teams. So those are two of my favorite projects that are just refreshingly boring.
It's about applications. We love games. Well, I love games. I play too many games. So we want to enable like multi-chain games and fully on-chain games with our technology. So we believe that game is always a very crucial part of the internet. And also games should be a very central part of Web3, but we're not seeing that many Web3 games. So what we're looking for out there is fully on-chain Web3 games or partially on-chain Web3 games, no matter if you're building from Web3 or even you're a Web2 game developer coming into Web3. We want to support that types of games with zkBridge, of course, to provide a full interoperability for game developers to easily develop on any of the chains. Any of the chains you like can easily move across different chains whenever you want. So that's the thing we initiated with you.
Thank you. Considering the limited time we have left, we have the final question for our panelists, and please make your answer very short and precise. So tell us what's your recent development of your project and your future plan.
Yeah, that's a good one. So it's 10 seconds. So we are supporting more layer 2s in the system, including Manta, including Linea, including Tyco see here. So we want zkBridge to be fully interoperable within the system for all rollups, layer 2 and layer 1, and any blockchain ecosystem.
We're supporting the launch of a number of rollups, as well as rollups as a service projects, Manta included. So we continue to be really excited to support our ecosystem projects. And then for Celestia itself, it's one word, it's mainnet.
I think we share that same word. So we just launched mainnet as well, and we're really excited to start onboarding as many applications as possible. We already have 250 contracts from testnet that are doing their current migration. And so if anyone in this audience is a developer, they've got an EVM-based application, would love to speak with you guys.
We're on the cusp of a lot of exciting news as well. We're about to launch our public testnet, so we invite any developers who want to come play with our network, and then obviously mainnet afterwards. We'll be at, we'll host some more IDC summits. We'll see you guys at Solana Breakpoint and DevConnect soon, as well as a virtual hackathon. So if you guys are interested in hanging out with us, find us then.
We're on our way to get to a testnet product and like get into beta, and as we do that, in the upcoming weeks, we'll be publishing more and more demos and tutorials. So we're very excited about getting those out there and getting as much as people playing with the SDK, seeing the limits of the applications they can build with this new next generation blockchain-based application tool.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, the panelists, for your time and sharing. I believe that their diverse background experiences has provided invaluable insight into the modular infrastructure stack. And next, welcome to our fourth panel of zkDay Singapore, where we will explore the realm of zkEVM and its implication on Ethereum scalability. And join me in welcome David Schwartz, co-founder and CTO at Polygon, Daniel Wang, co-founder of Tyco, Jiaheng, co-founder at Scroll, Dr. Modular, co-founder at Seller Network and partner at IOSG, and last but not least, Shuyao Kong, global head of BD at Linea.
We should get fit.
All right. Okay, thank you everyone, and let's get the panel started. Good afternoon everyone. This panel is about zk rollup and zk technology in general, and we have a great panelist lineup here today. And my name is Mo, and I'm a co-founder of Center Network, which is a blockchain interoperability protocol. Some of you probably use our bridge solution like cBridge. More recently, we have been venturing into zk along with Previous as a new initiative in the zk co-processing space. I'm here on behalf of and by kind invitation of IOSG Venture Capital. And IOSG is a crypto native investment firm. Over the past couple of years, IOSG has been investing in the crypto space in and around the Ethereum ecosystem, from scaling solutions, middleware to major application verticals. Now today we have a great lineup, and most of the panelists are my old friends. But still, let's do a quick round intro. First for everyone.
Hey guys, this is Shuyao from Consensus. I think I'm the least technical person on this panel, so if there's any question that's technical, I volunteer to be skipped. But if you have a question about business, I'm more than happy to answer. I've been in the space for a few years, and we just recently launched a zkEVM called Linea, and it's not pronounced as Linea, it's called Linea. Happy to chat more. I'm gonna pass it on to Ye.
Hi everyone, my name is Ye. I'm the co-founder of Scroll. I mainly do some zk stuff, so I can maybe help answer more like zk technical questions. And for Scroll, we are building a scaling solution for Ethereum, which provide very seamlessly experience for developers and users. So if you are a developer, you just copy paste your code, deploy on Scroll, and the experience like cheaper, faster, higher throughput, like our system. And yeah.
My name is Daniel Wang. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tyco. So we are a little bit late to the game, but I think it's just about the right time. Tyco is trying to build a Type 1 zkEVM, Ethereum zk rollup, which is meant to be decentralized and permissionless. So if you have pooling hardware, you can join to pool Tyco blocks. If you want to propose blocks, you can propose blocks even just with your own transaction. So that's Tyco.
Hey guys, I'm David, one of the co-founders of Polygon, and also the CTO. At Polygon, we have multiple networks. We are announcing in these days is Polygon 2.0 vision. That's a set of proposals to the community. Probably you guys know the Polygon POS as the main network of Polygon as of today. We are upgrading to zk layer 2 POS next year. And we recently, 6 months ago almost, we launched the zkEVM mainnet, which is a beta version, and we are already available in mainnet. We are growing the TDL transactions and onboarding many infrastructure partners, so we can become a strong DeFi hub very soon. So my role is also global CTO, and I'm leading this Polygon 2.0 implementation. Very happy to be here with you guys today.
We actually have a 2 mics, sorry. Hello? Okay, all right, this actually works, great. So I guess the first question is that, there's no doubt that we have really come a long way in the zkEVM development, the zk rollup in the last couple of years. I still remember, like, approximately 3 years ago, people were still talking, is zkEVM, zk rollup even possible, right? Like the EVM compatibility and all that stuff. But we are at the verge of multiple launches for zk rollups, and we have seen some alpha launches in the space. I guess the first question is that, I guess for everyone in the panel, that is, where are we on zkEVM and zk rollup in general, both in technology front, but also in the ecosystem, developer building, community side, and what are some of the remaining challenges that you see in this space that need to be solved?
Thank you for just
asking the question. I can answer now. So from a consensus perspective, Linea, we're the second team, I think, after Polygon to work on zkEVM. Linea is a project incubated by Consensus R&D. I think about 3 years ago, we actually disagree with Vitalik, who believed state channel was going to scale Ethereum. We're like, actually, no, it's probably rollout. And I think it's really, I'm very pleased to see things played out from back in the days where really nobody believed it until now we have like a flourishing ecosystem. To answer your question, I think from both the technical business perspective, I truly believe we're at a pivotal point. We're seeing different permutation of different rollup directions, right? You're seeing optimistic rollup that going after the stack direction. I think Polygon is doing the same, and zk Sync. You're seeing players like us which focusing on building an ecosystem. So technology, we're at a point where there are different directions you can go, and the more the better. And then from a business perspective, I think you guys heard from the previous panel, they're just like a flourishing ecosystem of different dApps, like gaming, social. I mean, DeFi is a bit more mature, but now they have to figure out cross-chain and using interoperability protocol like Stellar. So I think we're also reaching a pivotal point where like the technology can take more depth, but people are just figuring out how to accommodate their own business model, token model, technology model based on different stacks. So it looks a little bit chaotic, but I'm really like optimistic about it.
In terms of us, like we are early last year, like we launched our first testnet, which is pre-alpha testnet, and early this year we launched our alpha testnet. And over 1 month ago, like we launched our final stage before our mainnet. So our mainnet is coming very, very soon. So in terms of our zk development, we are just last mile before mainnet. We have done a bunch of like security testing to kind of really better test our system. We kind of replay all the transactions from different networks, Linea, Polygon, Binance, all those chains to replay on in our testing environment. We spend millions of dollars in auditing with the best auditing company. We have a very strong security team to kind of trying to construct some test vector to attack our chain to see like because we have been code free, so like just doing more security testing, stress testing. That's the last step before our mainnet. And in terms of the kind of the bottleneck for zkEVM in general, I think there are still a lot of unsolved problems. For example, like the performance is still not amazing enough, because to achieve the vision like where you can generate proof, even like for Ethereum block, you need to generate proof within 1 block time, which is like 15 seconds. And no one like no zkEVM is even close to that number. So I still need some kind of performance improvement, and this can come from some hardware acceleration, like there are like hardware companies building really fast ASICs, FPGA GPUs, like we are working with a bunch like SysAC, Excel, all those companies, and they are building hardware to make proof generation really faster, and also like trying to optimize there are big changes in proof system every half a year, and we are doing a lot of benchmarks for what is the best proof system to increase the performance. And in terms of the whole system, there are still a lot of unsolved problems, which, for example, you can construct some bad transaction with a lot of like catch check or really hard to prove output in this transaction, and it go over your zkEVM capacity. So we need to find a way to chunk like large transaction into smaller ones, to turn this you can't prove something into proving time is longer, and to make sure that you can prove everything. So there are still a lot of challenges there, and everyone like regardless like months earlier launching or earlier than us or whatever, like we are on the same starting point, because everyone is not ready. Everyone is in alpha, beta, whatever stage, and also we are in early stage of ecosystem building and community building. And if you want to join and contribute, we have a lot of guidelines, and feel free to reach out to our team. And our zkEVM is built in a very open and community-driven way. So if you want to become part of the contributor, feel free to contribute.
So Tycho, from a testnet perspective, we launched 4 testnets already. We still have at least 3 to go. In terms of zk, I think what we learned is that things will change a lot. I mean, back in 2018, when we engineered the blueprint, the first zk rollup, we used like Growth 16. Not a lot of tools to be available at that time. So now if you look around, there are a lot of options, right? But none of those options are perfect. So the tooling is still the biggest problem in terms of writing circuits, and there are a lot of performance issues with all the backends, right? And even as Ian mentioned, if you carefully construct the layer 2 block, you can make the prover fail because there are too many constraints there or something. It's just not all problems are solved. So in general, I think it's still in the very early stage for zk to really solve the scalability problem. But we are on the right track, and you will see nice things happening gradually over time. So when we have multiple zk rollups that can scale Ethereum by 100 or 1,000 times, then more issues will pop up, and we will fix those issues later on. But as of now, let's just try to make things happen as quickly as possible and fix problems later on, and try to watch out for new developments in zk. And this doesn't just take one team; it takes the entire Ethereum ecosystem to collaborate with each other to try those new ideas. So recently we tried the risk zero approach, which is really fun. I shared this experience with a lot of people. We feel like if we can just avoid writing circuits directly and just write a stateless Rust program, that's cool, right? So that's what we try to, what we expect.
Yes, well, at Polygon, we are at beta mainnet currently. We launched at the end of March this year. Before that, we launched the testnet October last year. And the network we launched was with a full prover implemented. So it took a lot of time to audit this prover because it's a very complex technology. We needed to build some languages to build this automatization from EVM equivalence to the prover side. And this audit, this security was something we wanted to take very seriously. So when we launched mainnet in zkEVM, you could find a process to verify the prover. So you know that this prover is deployed, the prover is verified in the smart contract is the same prover that you are in the repository, and you have the audits in there. Every time we do an upgrade or improving some features or doing some kind of update, we do a delta audit. So security is very important topic for us. But we were focusing heavily on the prover side, because when we started this project 1.5 years ago, it was considered impossible, it was considered something non-practical, and we were just trying to make this happen from the backend. Then, what we face today is after the launch of the mainnet 6 months ago, 5 months ago, we are finding performance issues, because we were doing the front end, let's say the client was ensuring that the proofs were absolutely feasible to execute, because the one situation you can have, as Daniel was saying, is that the prover gets stuck for some reason. This is the new consensus is the prover, so you need to have something solid. We accelerated this process in mainnet, and we have already 750,000 proofs already made. So it never stopped. The prover is very solid, and this is we're very proud about this and very happy. So what's next for us is an upgrade in the client side, so we can go from the current performance to very much higher performance. So our modular vision, maybe we can talk about this later, it's separating the client side from the prover side, because what the user perceives is like similar to optimistic rollups. They have an interaction with a client. That's confirming transactions, creating blocks. And there's this backend process of proving that's happening after this block creation. From our perspective, we created a system that can spin a lot of provers. So the more load you have, the more provers you can spin, because you will need to prove more transactions. And this provides a linear cost for the user. So our cost model is very constant. And well, anyone here is facing the same situation. Data on chain is still expensive, but we can discuss about this later. But from our perspective, this solution is already available. We are onboarding major partners for DeFi operation. and we are super excited for the next performance upgrade that's coming.
Yeah, thanks for the great answers. I guess everyone kind of mentioned the two things I want to kind of dig deeper a bit. One is on the technology side, right? So like the other is more on the adoption side. So on the technology side, I guess everyone kind of agree in the zk space that the underlying technology and the underlying cryptographic research is developing at a really kind of fast pace, right? So there is a lot of new things popping up, like folding, like very structured lookup table structures, like thread with small field, and all that's exciting stuff, right? So, but every one of the existing zkEVM projects are built with almost like a snapshot of the technology stack at a certain point, right? So, but underlying technology is moving fast and moving forward. So, I guess the question for more technical side of the question for our panelists is that how would you kind of deal with this kind of underlying shaping landscape of the zk technology in general? How do you try to incorporate this into your current stack if you want to incorporate them? Or is there any specific interesting technologies or interesting directions that you guys are looking at the moment? So I guess we can start from,
So from our, so definitely like I fully agree. Like just to add more context to this question. So in the past half a year, like because there are more like pooling system coming out like every day, like maybe every week you see like new folding scheme and new start and new constructions, making your prover maybe sometimes become 2 times faster, 3 times faster, but there are also trade-offs and how you kind of choose between different protocols. And for us, we classify those different technologies into different categories and make the most important trade-off. For example, like one big change is like Snark in normal sense use large field, like it's based on elliptic curve, based on different like assumptions, and the other side is smaller field, which you fry, break down, or other error correcting code-based pooling scheme. So one big decision, I think, among all the trend is that you first need to classify into whether you want to move into that direction or stay in this large field direction. And we are doing a bunch of benchmarks for like what we can benefit from this large field. So one potential direction for why large field is still matter is that because people usually complain large field because imagine that you have a program, but every variable is on a very large finite field, like 256 bits. So every computation is done like very slowly because you need to do those large modular arithmetic. But if you move to smaller field, all the arithmetic can fit into your CPU register because it's 32 bits, 64 bits. So like the native computation is way faster than smaller field. So but the good thing about larger field is that firstly it's based on very traditional assumption, like KDG is well tested and the elliptic curve assumption has been tested for a long time. And but Fry, the other side of the pool system rely on some projection and some other security assumptions for pool system. And the other cool thing is that there are new technology coming out like folding, which will require elliptic curve because you need to kind of fold linear combine multiple instances together, and you need some homomorphism for your underlying cryptographic primitives, and that can only be done on elliptic curve. And the third thing is that you can use some really large lookup tables to kind of make witness generation process become faster and also simplify your computation. So that's the good thing about like large field, and we are doing more benchmark around like how fast this kind of using large lookup can give you, and how much like if you are putting 100 catch checks, and how does that compare like your performance between folding and smaller field. I think after you figure out this large distinction, then like all other technology will be easier to figure out because if you choose smaller field, it's easier for you to benchmark which polynomial commitment scheme is the best scheme among all of them. Like there is breakdown, there is free fry, there is Orient, all those polynomial commitment schemes. And then like if you figure out, it's larger field, then you have to stick to some kind of more normal setup and with no large lookup table. So I think for us, the biggest difference is between two big directions, and definitely there are some other directions like zkEVM, build out zkEVM on top of zkEVM. But so far, what we see that even for this zero, they need like 64 GPUs, like a GPU cluster, to generate proof for one block, which is not so acceptable. You can't set up. So that's why we are still looking to making it a specialized, because zkEVM is special enough to make a specialized circuit for that. So that's our thinking behind this, but we are still looking into whether that can be performant someday, and you don't really need to write circuit yourself.
So Tycho also has researchers. We don't have too many. We have researchers, trying to get the most up-to-date information about the new algorithms, but we are also very cautious not to rush into it, because we feel like it's okay to be late, but it's not okay to make the wrong decision. Also, we always assume that the proving system is just a component of the entire Tycho solution. For example, with the latest product design, we make sure one proof can be challenged by anyone, and then this proof can be overproven by more trustworthy proofs. So that's our approach of using multi-proof or multi-validity proof to secure the chain. I think it's the very first I have seen in this space. I hope other layer 2s can give some feedback, and maybe we can adopt this solution altogether. The one direction that we pay special attention to is the continuation. We want to make sure in the future, do we really need to have high-end CPU or GPU to prove the blocks? Maybe we can just break down one single job into 1,000 chunks and then distribute over home computers, right? So that's one direction that we are super excited about. But as I said, we don't want to rush into offering a solution, but we are carefully just following this new trend.
Yes, on our side, we have a very strong team in zk research also. We created last year this Pruden foundation. That's a small field libraries for proving, and that most of these ideas are used in this zkEVM prover. Some of the teams in the space are also using these libraries and these concepts. It was our choice to work on a small field because our prover is very efficient in this model. But of course, some other techniques are coming, and we need to be open to improve. In fact, we are researching the next version, Dorothy 3, is also coming, and we are considering to include these improvements in the prover in the next months. But of course, we are in this early stage where we are experimenting a lot with zk, and the focus initially was to prove that this is practical, and now we come to this optimization phase, because even the transaction cost for us is very cheap in terms of proving cost. It's sub 7, 10 to the minus 4 for an Ethereum transfer. It's almost nothing, but still there are many applications and many use cases we want to support with this proving technology, and this on us to continue improving. We need to be flexible, and we need to see what's coming. There's a lot of innovation in the space, and we're happy to embrace it.
Okay, thank you. So on the, I guess, while we are rushing towards that exciting future of technology development, the one thing is that many of the zk rollup and zkEVMs are launching or has launched, right? So I guess the question is, what is the playbook to attract a real-world adoption, right? So real user adoption, because there have been playbooks in the past of migrating a lot of DeFi protocols into these rollup, into different layer 1, alternative layer 1, layer 2s. But because obviously we have seen that because of the nascent stage of the zk technology, there are some trade-offs in the zk rollup space, right? So in that case, how do you see or envision to attract adoption in the building ecosystem from this?
I'll be quick, I know we're running out of time. I think it's the most important thing for us to do is make sure the foundation, the technology foundation, is robust. I do think there are other things we have to contribute as infrastructure player to the ecosystem. The way we think about wallet, the way we think about developer tool, like Daniel mentioned, the way we talk to normies about what crypto really is. So I think I welcome everybody to think technology is extremely important. I welcome everybody to think about the use case and how we talk about use case to the rest of the community.
I will also be quick. So our vision is to build our ecosystem like an infinite garden, which means like we can't predict like what's happening in our ecosystem. Anything can come to realize, to make an impact on scope, to build whatever you want. And also because Ethereum has such a large existing developer ecosystem, so our job is similar to what Shuyao mentioned, like making sure like on the protocol layer you are super secure, super stable, and provide all the developer toolings, type with Chainlink and all the oracles, get what developer wants, and use the hackathon and some other way to promote like this vibe for building with the community and the developer centric, and then like to kind of really bootstrap the ecosystem. And on the other hand, we also care about the real world use case. So that's why like we travel to a lot of like especially different corners of the world. So last month I spent like 10 days in Africa talking about with the founders there, understanding, because those places are where crypto has real need, and understanding why they are using crypto as a layer 2, how can we help? So we pay a lot of attention to like Vietnam, Latin America, Turkish, and a lot of places like that, and trying to get some real world use case. Because I think blockchain is not something on the fly, not just like for large whales, but it actually needs to be on the ground for real users.
So our mentality is that you should build with us. Our code base is open source. We try to be open, to be inclusive, and we try to provide options. But we try not to say, okay, this is the best layer you should use, because we understand different applications have different level of security requirements, right? If you transfer $1,000, do you really need zk at all? You can be optimistic a little bit, right? So I think our approach is to make sure that you can build your own chain with our stack by configuring the chain using different validity proofs. So I said this before, I wish you can try Tyco and launch your own action, and then you can deploy your more secure app into the Tyco canonical chain and use multiple zk proofs to secure that.
Yes, for Polygon, the strategy of adoption is based on into this new announcement we did of Polygon 2.0, where we have this vision of multiple chains connected by zk proofs, and we want to provide this bridge to liquidity between chains. So today you can deploy CDK, your own stack, in 10 minutes. You can deploy your provers. You can start, building on these vertical app chains that will be interconnected. Today we have a bridge that supports multiple layer 2s, so we can move assets between different layer 2s without going through layer 1. And we have this vision of this aggregation layer where we can combine these proofs to do atomic transactions and composability between chains. So this is the strategy. For us, the zkEVM is the zk rollup, and we want to attract DeFi and liquidity into this chain. We have all these partnerships going on. We already have POS, which is the most used chain in the world, probably, in terms of transactions per second and number of users. So we want to build this ecosystem natively because we don't find any specific use case that will drive this. Today, the TVL and this DeFi is kind of the comparison between chains. But last week we were in Korea, and Korea's gaming industry is crazy. So we are not so sure we will be the best and the next use case that will bring massive adoption of Web3. Probably the value of transactions is different, but all the users count. And we want to bring Polygon, the objective of Polygon is bring Web3 to the masses and massive adoption. So we are inviting other layer 2s and layer 1s to join this ecosystem of liquidity, and some announcements are coming in the next weeks around this. So very exciting times for this adoption.
Cool, thank you. So while we have a lot more questions that can be discussed among this panel, but I think we're running out of time. So let's give a round of applause for excellent panelists here.
Sincere appreciation to the panelists for giving deep insight about zkEVM and the potential impact of it on Ethereum and the wider blockchain landscape. And now let's move to the fifth panel of the day, where we will focus on the crucial topic of privacy, safety, and sovereignty on the blockchain. And warm welcome to Henry Spencer, co-founder of zkEVM, Alex Pruden, CEO of Alier, Nico, Schapeler, co-founder and core dev at Elusive, Jonathan, head at ABCDE Advisory, and last but not least, Dennis, CFO of My Network.
Okay, thanks everyone for having us. So maybe we can just kickstart with the panel and just do a short introduction about ourselves, what are we working on, and what are we building right now. Yeah, maybe we can start from Alex.
Yeah, hey everybody, pleasure to be here. I'm Alex, I'm the CEO of Alien, so layer one blockchain that enables zk smart contracts. You can kind of think of it as Zcash plus Ethereum. So I've been the CEO of Alien for a year or so. I've been at the company for about 3. I also run zPrize, which is an industry-wide collaboration in accelerating zk cryptography by hardware acceleration. So before this, I was in venture. I worked at ACCT Crypto.
Hey guys, my name is Nico. I'm one of the co-founders and co-developers of Elusive. And Elusive is also a privacy solution with which you can plug and play privacy into existing general purpose blockchains.
Hey guys, my name is Henry, and I'm the co-founder of zkEVM. So we are building a world's first fully on-chain tax-facilitating platform powered by Pruden. So basically, by using our zk shuffle smart contract, we decentralize the entire car shuffling calculating process, so that for the first time ever, we will be able to enjoy a poker game that you can be 100% sure is not there. So yeah, that's what we're building. And we actually have a booth back over there. So if you guys are interested, feel free to chat with us after this panel.
Hi everyone, I'm Dennis, and I'm the Chief Security Officer of My Network. The My Network is a decentralized data lake. It actually focuses in privacy protection, and the technology we embrace, including privacy computing for homomorphic encryption, and we also do end-to-end protection to protect all the data.
Yeah, so I'm John, the head of advisory for ABCDE. So ABCDE, the Web3 focused investment fund that do early stage deals and are typically very technical and tech focused. So we do deals like AA, zk, data, infrastructure. Yeah. So I think without further ado, we can kickstart the panel and let's move on to our first question. Maybe the first question would be, why is on-chain privacy important, and why should it matter to individual organization? I think we can do this like more of a freestyle manner. So anyone that feels free, just hop on and just answer the question.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I can start. Yeah, so for me, whenever I talk to friends who are in Web 2 or who aren't in Web 3, I tell them I work in Web 3. And I told them more specifically I work on privacy. Most of the time from all of them, it's, wait, what? Web3 isn't private by default. And when I explain to them that it isn't, I never have had the reaction of someone saying, oh, that's awesome. I wish traditional financial systems were like that. So that already tells you that for pretty much everyone in the world, be it institutionals, be it individuals, finances, which in my opinion is the key use case for blockchains, are something that is just inherently private. You wouldn't ask someone on the street what their bank account is or what stocks they bought recently. So for that reason, I believe that if we really want to make blockchain go mainstream and really help people all over the world, privacy isn't just a nice feature to have. It's something that you need to have in order to onboard institutions that want to keep their trading strategy secret, or even just people that want to buy a coffee without leaking their entire financial history to the whole world.
Yeah, I think that was a great point. I think for the financial, just to restate what Nico said very eloquently, I think for the traditional financial use cases, the UX of finance is private by default. In crypto, I think everything's public by default. It's very different. I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't seen DeFi manage to bridge the gap between degen finance and real finance. Because I think most traditional institutions and many large investors, including one that I used to work for, care deeply about who can see what transactions they execute and when. And in addition to the financial use cases, I also think there's other use cases, specifically around identity and authentication, that I think privacy can enable more consumer protection or personalized control that it's not possible to do in a decentralized manner on the traditional web. So I think there's actually several reasons that privacy is essential if we want to see blockchains become mainstream.
Yeah, for the users in Web3, we seems to be anonymous. However, actually, because all the data in the blockchain, actually they are the open ledger. All the transactions, they are connected. So as long as in one transaction we link our real identity, then actually all of our history actions from the first transaction when you enter the Web3, actually all the data will be released to others. So for this open things, and it also deals with our financial data that actually have a huge demand for the privacy. Actually, in this year, he mentioned 3 transactions, and he says that for Ethereum, it will fail if the 3 transactions doesn't count. And among these 3 transactions, one of them is privacy. He said that we need a private transfer of copy in Ethereum. So that's my opinion.
I think the 3 panelists here, covering most of the widening privacy here, but like with your audience specifically, like what we're building is a poker game. So for poker, obviously you cannot build it on a public blockchain because it doesn't really make sense if your opponent will be able to see your poker information. So I guess that counts as privacy as well. So like for the audience, like it's really simple. It's just how we mimic the actual world. How when people play poker in the actual world, how that functions. Like you won't be able to see your opponent's cards, you won't be able to see the community cards until it's being opened up. So I think that's just a base layer for any imperfect information that's to be built on chain on the basis level. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for establishing the importance of zk privacy. I think that follows up to our next question as to how you guys think should be held responsible for on-chain privacy, and exactly be it on the infra layer, the application layer, or even the user level. Like who should actually be held responsible?
Yeah, I think a system where you can have it as private and permissionless by default is what we want, right? I think this is why why we decided to build Aleo as a layer 1 protocol. Actually, fun fact: when we started Aleo at the beginning, we contemplated it as a layer 2 rollup, and the reasons why we decided not to pursue that path was 2. 1, that privacy on the account model of Ethereum is quite difficult, which is why none of the zk rollups, even though it's zk, actually none of them give you privacy. Right? It's all about the scalability property of the snark. So privacy in that model is just difficult. And then 2, the performance hit that you take, right? And really, when there's a performance hit, as often is the case in zk, oftentimes there is a desire to kind of centralize to some kind of third-party prover. So then you kind of offload, to your question, you offload the responsibility of privacy to a third party. But I think what makes blockchains special in terms of network or computer architecture is that individuals have sovereignty. right? So individual sovereignty, can be exerted through the network at the furthest edge in the graph, right? And I think we have a lot of systems already that give us privacy. I mean, we talked about the traditional financial system. My bank is actually pretty good. Most people can't see my bank account today. So it's like, if I am willing to trust an authority to keep things private, we already have solutions for that. What I don't think we have solutions for, though, is a network that is decentralized, permissionless, and we have control over what we share and who.
Yeah, definitely great points from Alex, and I agree on the most of the points, just in terms that it should be at the infrastructure layer and not at the application or even user layer. On one hand, of course, because it makes it easier, like the points that Alex mentioned, but one other light I think is quite relevant here as well, is that it makes it more easy to standardize. Because look at Web2, for example. A lot of the privacy stuff, SSL, HTTPS, is also not the infrastructure layer. The reason being that simply a lot of this relies on cryptography, where even the smallest error can lead to you losing all of your privacy or worse. So I believe for this reason, it's also important to have at the infrastructure layer, because that way you can ensure that everyone uses a unified model of privacy that's proven to work, and you don't have to worry about one application doing it this way and another doing it this way, and potentially flawed implementations.
Yes, I think those are all great points. Like definitely we need to standardize how we keep privacy to blockchain in a standard way. So, but I think for zk Hold'em, we are a little bit unique example is that we define privacy in a pretty specific way. We use this zero knowledge proof technology in a very specific way to just control a little bit of information that won't be able to show into a company. So I think actually we're just like Alex mentioned, in the traditional world, traditional online poker, they don't have the privacy issue. The issue is that they're too private. Everything is being controlled in a centralized server, and obviously there's no privacy issue. But the point is that it's not decentralized enough. So right now we are basically going from one extreme to another extreme, where we are 100% decentralized. But then how can we bring privacy to this thing so that it can work? Traditionally, the most basic need for a poker game to work now is the hardest thing to do. So I think for zk Hold'em, we are basically just trying to explore the options that we can do to rebuild this really fundamental element of poker on blockchain. And I think, by doing that, we're actually, paving ways for a lot of different type of imperfect information games. Because a lot of games require shuffling, a lot of games they require, the Dark Horse is a really good example. You want to keep the game fun. There are always a part of the information you want to keep to yourself. You don't want to reveal to your opponents. And by building zk Hold'em, we're actually trying out different options that we thought of, and we are realizing a lot of stuff that hasn't been realized before. So we basically help see which way is the good way for the entire fully on-chain game industry to go forward. So I'm really happy and I'm really proud of our team to be in this position to help doing all of this. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, from the perspective of regulation, I think the answer to the question is that depends. Because the organization of the data is different in different applications. According to the data protection law, such as the Europe GDPR and the China personal information protection law, actually they all say that the one who collects data is responsible to protect the privacy of the data. So if some applications they just collect data and keep the data in a centralized maybe centralized database, then they will be responsible for that kind of data. And however, if that application is only decentralized and each user owns his own data, then the end user himself is responsible for his own data, own privacy data. And the next question is how they can keep their data to be privacy. Then I think they should, because their responsibility is to choose infrastructure which has the key features or functionalities which can provide the privacy protection. So yeah, that's my opinion. So they would choose the infrastructure.
Thanks everyone for your answer. So I think the next follow-up question would be, in terms of design in blockchain development, what do you guys think are actually the key principles? For example, like for Alex, you're building Helio, what do you think are the key principles behind building Helio? And for yourself, as a DM, what goes into your mindset and building apps and layers that are privacy focused?
Yeah, I just got handed the mic, but I think actually maybe you should start, because I think what you said just in the question there is very important. Like, we have a tendency in crypto to start, and I'm the CEO of a layer 1, so I'm as guilty as anyone. We have a tendency to start in crypto from the bottom level of the infrastructure stack and build up to somewhere up there where there's an application. And I really think, I've been convinced now after years of seeing the space, investing in the space, and building the space, that I think that's a bit of a flawed approach. I think it's really, really important to have in mind a use case that you're trying to serve. I could reference any number of Steve Jobs videos where he talks about this, like in the 90s, right, when the internet was brand new. And I think it's really important, I think. So what we think about when building Aleo is like, we always have choices over what new feature to include or what opcodes to include in our language, right? And I think what we try and do is keep in mind, like, hey, what are we seeing on the network? What is the feedback we're getting from the community about what types of use cases are really interesting? Gaming is a use case that some of the developers who on Aleo are really focused on. Identity is another one. And I think to a certain extent, we really try and integrate that. And then with that end use case in mind, given the constraints that I mentioned ago of permissionlessness and privacy, like, I view those as constraints. Those are not something we compromise on. So then the dimension is about performance, right? Performance in this setting can be extremely challenging, especially depending on the size of circuit, right? So really, really focusing on, optimizing and making the stack as efficient as possible in order to make the user experience, which, once again, going back to the user experience, the end application, like, that's a lot of what we focus on. That's also why we started zPrize. So the shirt I'm wearing is zPrize, not Aleo. zPrize was meant to be focused on hardware acceleration specifically for zk starts, because I think, if you look at the history of cryptography on the web, it wasn't until you started seeing the introduction of instructions baked into the Intel CPU where AES became basically cost-free, or encryption operations became cost-free. And I think we're going to start seeing that same thing in crypto and in zk specifically. But yeah, for me, I guess the quick answers are, like, we consider the end use case and the user experience, and then performance according to that.
Yeah, so for Elusive, definitely also big focus on the UX. However, one thing that we thought was quite important for the UX was also composability with existing systems. Because if you look at the blockchain space today, like Alex said, there's a lot of people or tons of projects that start really from the lowest possible layer. And as a result of that, if you check CoinMarketCap, there's hundreds of L1s. However, there's probably only a handful that actually have significant usage. So for that reason, when we designed Elusive, we wanted to build a solution with which users can, in the best case, continue using whatever protocols they're already using, be that their favorite DEX, their favorite lending protocol, their favorite whatever protocol. And in the best case, continue using that one on whichever chain they're using with the least amount of effort needed to switch to a different chain. So definitely composability we found was, very important. However, another one that we also kept in mind as we designed and are working on Elusive is compliance. Because although everyone hates this word in crypto because it's way less fun than all the other parts, it is something that's relevant as well, especially in the privacy space. Because even if it's not because regulators are telling us or whatever, I think no one here in this room wants to build privacy solutions because they want to support criminals or bad actors or whatever. So for that reason, when we designed Elusive, we also wanted to make sure we came up with a system with which we can, build some sort of self-defense against bad actors that, of course, doesn't require us to sacrifice decentralization.
Yeah. So yeah, both of you guys are talking about like the user experience, but I assure you, for the application community members, they're much more picky on the UX side than the infrastructure like completely different. Like literally like when we just built like zkEVM like our first demo, like we are super excited because we're using this we specifically use case zkCircuit, and we have to build our own smart contract to do everything. And then we think this is in technology wise we're making a huge step. But then like in the end like people are asking us, it's taking like 5 seconds for just one shuffle. Then how are you gonna convince people to play on your platform? It doesn't really make sense. So it was really I guess a shock, not as a shock, but as a reminder at that time, for us, yeah, of course, we have a really, our tech team is a really, gigantic tech team, they have photographer and stuff, but in the end, like, if we want to build a customer-facing product, then it's really the really boring part, like how can you make the latency lower? How can you even lower the gas cost? Even that's the best we can do. You just have to push again and again on that user experience side, and hopefully in the end with better infrastructure we'll be able to get to level Web3, Web2 worker platforms. But right now, to be honest, we still have a long way to go to do. And we optimize our smart contract, we optimize our zkCircuit, we choose really good layer 2 solutions that offer really low latency and low gas costs. We are trying to build our own app chain. We're trying everything. But still we have a long way to go. But I think for us specifically, user experience is really the top one consideration.
Yeah, in my opinion, the key principle for data protection is trustless. Actually, previously we talked about that some centralized platforms, they are too private. However, I think being private does not equal to a good practice of privacy protection. They are not actually equal. Because you can see that in Web 2.1, we have a lot of data breaches every year. We have a lot of breaches because in such kind of centralized data solution, actually all the users, they do not have any choice but to hand over all of their privacy secret to the centralized platform. Then the platform will be compromised, no matter from inside or from outside, maybe by exploiting vulnerabilities or by phishing, the platform being compromised. Then the data will just be gone, and eventually maybe to the black market. So I think a good practice would be just like in Web3, the data will be decentralized, and every user, they can take control of their own privacy. So actually, in my network, we are working on the end-to-end encryption, so that every user, they protect their own data by using their own private key in their wallet. So I think that will be a solution for the data protection.
Thanks, everyone. So I think by now we understand the importance and benefit of on-chain privacy. So I think the follow-up question would be, why do you guys think that we haven't had much access to on-chain privacy solutions, and what are the obstacles that we have to overcome in order to have widespread adoption of on-chain privacy?
I can go quickly because I think I sort of answered a little bit of the previous question. I think we need focus on what applications people are interested in, so then we can optimize the performance of the prover stack on that in a permissionless way, which is much more challenging. And of course, maybe it's so permissionless. Maybe I guess let's unpack here. I think there's a couple different modes that you can imagine displaying out. One being where it's like, hey, the client is generating proofs, or the client is verifying proofs, right? So we talked about trustless systems. Trustlessness is maybe another principle that we care about here. And the beauty of cryptography and zero-knowledge cryptography in particular is that the client can verify a computation was was correct, right? So in addition to keeping something private, you can verify that computation was correct. So I think there's a lot of different ways those circuits can look. A lot of different ways. There's many different use cases I can imagine. And do you want the client-generated proofs? Do you want the client to verify a proof generated by a powerful prover, right? And potentially, you can still have a privacy-preserving system with a third-party prover if you integrate other privacy-preserving techniques like multi-party computation. But yeah, I think I'm tempted to say performance, but really I think it's more of a focus in drilling down on, hey, what's holding back zk? It's the killer application for zk for the user, where thousands of people are clamoring to sign up. Because I think once you have that demand, once we find that use case, all of the infrastructure is going to fall into place underneath it to make it faster, better, cheaper.
Yeah, so for me, I think for this question, my answer is pretty much the same as the previous one, and along the same lines of what Alex said as well, which is basically having good applications for privacy tech. Mainly the reason being that with the current state of affairs, at least for many things, users have to pick between the best possible, dApp to do something, or a private version of it, which is significantly worse. So for example, for a swap, you can pick to either do a swap with Uniswap or 1inch or something and have great performance, great price matching, especially because the teams who work on these things have spent years optimizing this very use case. Alternatively, I'm not too aware of too many specifically 100% private dark pools, but I'm sure they probably don't have as good performance as Uniswap or 1inch does. So for that reason, I think one of these aspects, like I said before, is definitely composability with existing applications to make sure that you can get the best of both worlds, both the privacy part and the years of development that we shouldn't just throw out the window in existing dApps. Additionally, again, not the nicest thing to talk about, but I think compliance, especially since the whole Pareto Cash debacle, has become a more and more relevant topic as well. Because if we look at what privacy app probably had the most volume or users, it used to be Pareto Cash. But there's a reason no one uses it now anymore, because people are scared that they'll get in trouble or that they'll get their phones frozen or they won't be able to interact with certain applications anymore if they use one of these privacy protocols. And I think solving that takes two aspects. Like on one hand, like I said previously, building solutions with which you can defend against bad actors. But on the other hand, also fixing up the image a bit, getting people to understand that privacy is a fundamental right and something that is important for loads of use cases that don't have anything that associated with them.
Yeah, I think just one thing I want to add on is definitely the education side. So I mean, for us, we're an application, like consumer-facing application. We just, basically, at this point, everything that we are doing is like trying to onboard, let's forget about the Web2 people, just Web3 people. Like 90% of people, they don't really understand how zk works. Why do you claim to be zk, and how does that make your application more decentralized compared to the traditional ones? So I think that's basically what we have been doing.
Just leave
basically my job is so that education is definitely the thing that we need to improve.
Yeah, I think the reason is from the demand side, not from the technology side. Because I think in Web3, the data currently the data in Web3 are not very diversified. They are mainly just the financial data. And for the financial data, privacy is important, but it's not the top priority. Because the top priority for property is the ownership. Okay. Then secondly, maybe it will be the privacy of the data. However, let's look into Web2. In Web2, we just pay a lot of attention in privacy because we have a lot of our daily life data. It directly connects to our real physical person. So that data will be, the privacy will be the top priority for that kind of data. So I think in Web3, as its development and more good apps being put into use, and we have a lot of our personal daily life data in Web3, then at that time, I think privacy may be pay a lot of more attention than nowadays. That's how
unfortunately, with that, that's all the time we have. So thank you everyone for your insights and sharing your thoughts. Let's give everyone a round of applause.
Yeah, thank you guys for walking us through the importance of privacy and sovereignty on the blockchain, also addressing the challenges and opportunities that arise in the decentralized system. And now it's time to conclude the panel sessions with the last panel of the day, VC's perspective. And pleasure to have Regath, research analyst at Wang Venture, Louis Song, partner at 7X Ventures, Han Cheng, investment VP at Crescendo Ventures, and Michelle Yi at Beachin Ventures.
Hi everyone. Thank you for your time. So imagine a world where our digital information is even more private, secure, and efficient. That's the promising of zero knowledge and modularity. So today we have a group of brightest minds in VC space, where how do we know these are the future trends? And well, we follow the money and with efforts to invest in these great ideas. So without further ado, let's get started. So my name is Michelle. I'm VP of Marketing at Beachin Ventures. My role is to turn innovation into celebration. Okay. Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey everyone, Rahul this side from the investment team at Long Ventures. Pleasure to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm Louis from 7X Ventures. So where are you guys?
Hi everyone, my name is Hans. I'm part of the venture team at Crescendo Ventures.
All right, let's dive deep into the topic. So let's dig your mind. What is your perspective on zero knowledge and modularity? And what fuels the current interest in this technology within the blockchain space? And what factor has guided your focus towards this area?
So I think we all started focusing on Web3 with the promise of decentralization. But with time, we obviously realized there was some challenges in decentralized system. As you tend to decentralize more, there's some latency and there's communication overhead. So there are a few use cases which we essentially cannot scale using decentralized ecosystems. And I feel that's where zk comes in quite handy, whereby you have the ability to do verifiable computation, and you could essentially, move certain use cases which are not so feasible in blockchain to off-chain and then be able to prove them on-chain. So I see verifiable compute being one of the strongest, aspects of zero knowledge, which is enabling a lot of applications and use cases which are so far not so scalable. And obviously privacy is another factor which really helps in the moving this matter forward. I think modularity is really interesting because it allows us to create specialized layer and enables great minds to focus on those specialized aspects. And modularity not only in terms of the blockchain design, but also modularity within the zk proving ecosystem. So you have the zk front end and you have the zk proving back end. So by modularizing those, we're moving at a very rapid pace. So you could essentially maybe swap out the backend and put a new backend which is much more optimized for particular use case. And the way we are looking at it is zk is more of an enabler. It's not an end game, but it's an enabler for a lot of use cases which for us so far were not so feasible on blockchain.
Yeah, I think for zk and modularity space, I'm specifically interested in how the zk technology we are using in the modularity space. So if you are doing deep research in certain area, I'm happy to have a chat with you guys to understand more. The first thing is how to replace the fraud proof using zk proof. So for all the OP rock right now, they are using fraud proof. But how they can use the zkEVM to generate zk proof for all their transactions for OP rock. That's the first area I'm interested in. The second area is like so in the shared sequencer area, everyone now is still using proof to get the fidelity for the shared sequencer for the sequencing and for the execution. And how can we replace the proof in this shared sequencer, decentralized sequencer area with zk proof? That's kind of like some project like Root Zero, like other guys are trying to solve it. If you have any kind of idea about that, I'm super interested to talk to you guys. And then the third is like for the decentralized sequencing and shared sequencing, how we can use zk technology on this shared sequencing side. That's the second thing I mentioned. The third thing I mentioned is for the DA. So for the DA specific part, how can we add the extra layer on top of current DA layer to protect the data privacy? So that's another area I'm interested. So these are three areas I'm interested in the modularity and zk space. If you have any kind of project or research, I'm happy to chat.
Yeah, so it's actually a very interesting question because we've seen like a significant with adoption around zk rollups, zk proofs in general, but also modularity, right? And I mean that's been going on for the past 1 to 2 years, and even like today, right? I mean, if we zoom out from an investment landscape, other ecosystems like DeFi, gaming, dApps in general have been struggling to really survive in this current market sentiment. Whereas if you look at infrastructure, it's been thriving, right? And well, that's both reflected in the valuation, but also the technology, right? From a more fundamental perspective, I think Eduard already briefly mentioned it. I mean, with the exception of Ethereum, like scalability has always been an issue, right? I mean, we've been using various, solutions, side chains, plasma, state channels, right? And so far it seems, roll-ups do have that leading narrative, like whether you're using optimism style, right, or optimistic style, or zk style, probability proofs. Now we also have this modular kind of angle where basically it's like Lego blocks, like segmenting all these layers, right? So whether that's DA, consensus, settlement, and execution, right? You have basically more custom, modular, flexible environment to build what the specific project or company actually needs, right? So I think with the modular, the zk stuff, that's actually going to be very interesting going forward. Yeah, and it will actually tap and disrupt like different industries. Yeah.
Thank you for shedding light on the driving force on zk and modularity. It definitely solves the problem of scalability problem and also privacy problem. So let's dive deep into the technology. Do you consider zero-knowledge proof essential for the success of the modular spaces, or do you see that modular concepts can thrive independently, possibly by employing automated techniques?
Sure. So I think that's a very interesting question. I don't see zero knowledge being essential for modularity. I think I would argue the other way around, that modularity in fact is becoming more and more essential for zero knowledge. So let's say you look at Manda Network, they're using Celestia for data availability, they're using modified OP stack, but they have a universal zero knowledge interpreter as well. So I think zk cannot be used for each and every stack, right? So you need to have zk only for a particular specialized use case. And hence, modularity, in my opinion, is what enables zk. If you look at, Chapter, for example, we have so many zkEVMs, and they have faced quite a lot of challenges because building Ethereum EVM is not so zk friendly. But what they did is they used the Cairo VM from Starknet ecosystem and just implemented EVM on top using Cairo language. That's a clear case of modularity, right? Like your EVM is completely abstracted away from the zk proving framework. So I think modularity is definitely required for the success of zero-knowledge proof. And yeah, I'll just try to keep it short.
I'm not sure the relation between the zk and the modularity. So I only can say that areas in modularity may have the zk technology involved. So for example, for the zk rollups, they probably use the DA layer, no matter it's zkEVM or even DA. Or it's in the sequencing area I mentioned before, they may use zk proof that's very fast fidelity in the high frequency trading or gaming space. And another thing is because if we have so many execution layer or zk execution layer, and when they all generate zk proof, we need to verify the on-chain, but verification for this so many proof is the cost very high, the speed very slow. That reason why like the sovereign labs, they are investing in some of the proof aggregation technique. Basically, they aggregate all the zk proof from different kind of execution layer and then to combine to one proof and verify the on-chain, the cost is really low. So that's the area I can think about how zk will apply in the modularity space. But in general, I don't think those two have much relations.
Yeah, I echo the question. So I mean, or with the previous panelists, I think when you say it's essential, you're basically implying that modularity's success is reliant on zk, right? So, and I think these two verticals can be segregated and they can actually thrive independently, right? So, very good example. And I do think, right, they can separate or they can thrive independently, but I think with zk keys or zk proofs, they can actually accelerate or support certain elements, right? So an example that I've been looking into is, you have the OP stack, right? And obviously that has gained significant traction with Caldera and some other rollup as a services. But there's recent announcement made by zkSync, and they introduced zkStack, right? So it's a zk competitor of the OP stack, but basically it's with the same intentions, right? So there's been some discussions around layer 3s, like building on top of layer 2, which first they proof, which to scaling, and basically where with StarkNet, so Superchain from Optimism, Orbit, Nitro from Arbitrum, and Hyperchains from zkSync. They're all working towards an environment where you have layer 3s, and these essential components, they basically introduce a more modular composable framework, right? So for instance, going back to the zk stack, its intentions is to give, whether you're a DeFi application or you're gaming or you're social or whatever, right? You can actually operate in such an environment where you can, based on your needs, right? So if you are a game and you want to build a fast, high throughput game, you need to have these scalable connections, right? If you're DeFi and you want composability, you can do that as well, right? That environment allows you to actually have custom modular kind of solutions, right? So I think in such a situation where you have, whether the OP stack or you're using zk stack, you can actually create these very custom solutions, right? And we can even think of bank solutions, right? So private blockchains where, for instance, you have JP Morgan with Onyx, and maybe Big Four or Visa, MasterCard launching their own custom, fixed income products or their own traditional products, right? To actually thrive in these L3s. So I think that's where, for instance, the zk stack, so a zk solution could be very much complementary to a more modular environment.
Thank you for sharing the perspective on synergy and independence of these spaces. So let's move on from technical to practical. Could you highlight the most promising use case for zero knowledge and modularity and their intersection as you speak today? Is there a confirmed product market fit, or is it predominantly driven by enthusiasm?
Yeah, confirmed product market fit is something every founder would want. I think we're pretty far from there. I think just saying that we have the products are always evolving, so I don't see there being a confirmed product market fit, but I do see a lot of promising use cases which are emerging. So scaling and privacy are obviously the ones which we have seen in the past few years made a lot of significant strides. What I'm quite bullish on at the moment is for example, on-chain storage proofs, being able to query, any historical data and doing arbitrary combinations. So being able to prove those arbitrary combinations on-chain is quite interesting. Something that I'm excited about, which may take quite a long time to reach fruition, is something, like being able to prove that data coming from an IoT device is authentic. So let's say you have a temperature monitor or temperature recording IoT device just next to an airport, and they need to confirm whether the data coming is correct or not, whether it's coming from the correct location or not. So right now we are still in very early exploration stages of zk. Once we reach a stage, where verification and proving is fast enough, where they can run on very simple circuits, I think we'll reach a point where zk will be used for a lot of verifiable compute. And it's not just blockchain. I do see a lot of potential in, use cases outside Web2 as well. So, for example, recently, auditable databases. So, if anything has been changed in a particular database, you could log those changes, generate a proof, and then verify on chain. So, there are quite a lot of promising use cases that are coming up. And as I mentioned earlier, modularity as a concept obviously has existed long before blockchain even came into the picture. So that's a fundamental concept with which a lot of systems have been designed so that it's easier to maintain and grow and iterate over them. I think it's essential to keep that in mind so that you're able to adapt as in when new zk proving frameworks come, new backend comes, new optimization comes. On-chain storage proofs, IoT devices, and then obviously privacy being able, and zk identity is another area that I'm quite bullish on. So, yeah.
So for the DA space, for the modularity space, I think already initial use case you can see DA is quite mature, and also there are a lot of execution layer there, and also now several people trying to do the shared sequencer there, but not sure how to get adopted. And with shared sequencer layer, they may have another layer to get faster fidelity. And also for the zk stuff, I think there's a lot of hype in the zk space right now. I can say all the zkL2 probably have a use case, and the general zkEVM will have use case. And also for others, zk coprocessor, storage proof, and I'm not sure. I think eventually zkEVM probably will do the storage proof, and also they will do like the co-processing by themselves. So I still feel it will be 3 to 5 years to go, and the next 1 to 2 years definitely have no traction for most of like the top-notch zk projects.
I do kind of share the similar thoughts. So I think there's a lot of froth and a lot of enthusiasm around the zk stuff, because obviously I think being an inventor means you're taking calculated risks to anticipate a maximum return, right? It's a probability game, right? So I think with venture capital or angel investors, right? So if we talk about modularity and zk stuff, a lot of that is actually unproven, right? Where if you are really pioneering in the research, you're reading academic papers, right? And we often have to kind of, acknowledge that academic stuff, when you turn them into actual products, the outcomes are going to be quite different, right? Because there's a lot of external factors that you don't, calculate, or that you actually can't kind of frame in these outcomes. I do want to also elaborate, when we talk about tangible, specific, products that zk actually or modularity can actually enhance, right? So I do think the storage groups are a very good example of that. So Robert also talked about it. With the storage groups, right? So in traditional systems, right? Smart contracts on the very base level, they need input, right? So if we look at oracles, they're basically the perfect solution to input external data, especially if you want to communicate with the real world events, right? So all the stuff that's happening in the real world, and you want to bridge that with blockchains.
But obviously these are centralized, right? So, and I mean, being in crypto, we're talking about like removing the middleman and being more transparent. So with the introduction of like storage proofs, right, in some aspects, it can actually replace or improve like the Oracle solution, right? Because with storage proof, they're basically indexing like a database, and I mean, blockchain is, I mean, best like example for a database. But the thing with these like size proof, like you need to kind of verify them on chain. And the issue with that is that, I mean, obviously, whenever you want to do that on chain, it becomes very computational, like heavy, and it's also very expensive. So it's not a scalable business or model. So this is a specific situation where you actually need, I mean, star proofs or star proofs, right? So zkP in that sense, because in that sense, like you can actually, I mean, compress the data, and now, I mean, it actually changes like the Oracle, I mean, site, but also makes a specific area more scalable, right? So I think in these specific situations, like zk proofs are actually useful.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. So we always talk about like maybe nowadays there's not much use case, but in 3 to 5 years there will be. So we can do some prediction in 3 to 5 years. Where do you foresee the combined utilization of their knowledge and modularity evolving in ways that are currently not common?
Oh, I think I shared this already. I think for the sequencing part, they can use, for the optimistic rollup, probably they can use the zk proof to replace raw proof. The first one. The second one is that they are using zk proof as a faster fidelity for the shared sequencing part. And on the others, like and also for the proof aggregation part, you can aggregate all the proof and into a single proof to verify the on-chain, and that will be, the cost is very low, it's much cheaper. And in which other areas? Probably in Mac space, like the ME-based space, now Flashbots is trying to build Swap, which is like the private net proof. They are using TE like as its moment. And if we can optimize zk and to basically have zk have the lower cost than TE, then probably you can still use the Mac space. And then for the zk in the like the outside of crypto space, I don't think there are much kind of the initial scenario can use zk, because the cost perspective, zk is so higher than TE, and also even though TE has a single point of failure issue, but in most heavy scenarios they don't really care. So that reason why I think anyway in the next 3 to 5 years, zk will still be in the crypto space and in those areas.
That's quite interesting. I wish I had a crystal ball to see what use cases will emerge in the next 5 years. But I think quite a lot of focus at the moment is optimizing on the zk proof generation and verification, because as we've all discussed multiple times, quite a lot of most significant challenges the cost associated with zero knowledge proofs, making it not so practical for a lot of use cases. So for the short term, we clearly see, as Optimism is working with O1 Labs and Risk Zero for their fraud proofs, zk-based fraud proofs, they might pivot to zk-based validated proofs. So I think the initial kind of focus will stay on scaling privacy and the use cases which we already discussed. In the long run, I'm really excited, founders come up with very interesting and innovative ideas or applications which leverage zk only for a small company. For example, a company is using zero knowledge proofs for building a CAPTCHA-like service, so that bots can be avoided from interacting with smart contracts. The typical Web2 CAPTCHA cannot work with smart contracts because you don't necessarily need a UI interface to interact with smart contracts. So that's a very interesting use case that could be enabled. So I think in the medium term, we would want more and more such innovative use cases and applications coming on top, which solve very, very specific problems. but that's mostly possible once you have a certain level of optimization in the proving, in the verification, the memory consumption, and the hardware requirements for all of these. Once we have that, then I believe there's definitely a lot of potential for zero knowledge to move outside the blockchain space as well. But yeah, for example, zk capture, that's specific to blockchains because you need bots. You don't want bots interacting with a smart contract. So such kind of use cases do excite me. And the reason that this space is very interesting is it's so experimental. We are not always sure what will work, what will not work. But at the same time, you have to think a little out of the box and try and see what might work. And again, it all comes down to zk being the enabler of the use case, not necessarily trying to force fit zk into your existing stack. We just need to focus on the problem statement at hand, and if it makes sense that zk and modularity can solve that, then absolutely let's go for it. If not, then there are other techniques to use. There are many other existing solutions.
I think that 3 to 5 years is a pretty long time frame, especially in crypto. So I mean, not too sure how the zk and modular space will look like in 3 to 5 years, but I think there's a interesting development, and it's kind of about the hybrid rollup. So I think read some papers about where because in today we're talking about either you're optimistic guy or you're a zk guy, right? So you're a believer that optimism or optimism is going to win, or one of these zk rollups. But there are also some papers that are talking about a hybrid rollup structure, right? So basically an environment where instead of competing optimistic and zk, you have a convergence of these rollups, right? So you can actually combine certain optimistic rollups with zk elements, right? And I think that's also for instance optimism working on Bedrock. You have these zkEVMs that are trying to help accommodate and also accelerate that adoption, right? So I think that's something that's going to be interesting, and maybe we'll see more of these kind of hybrid models. Obviously, with modular solution, you can actually decompose and compose specific kind of blockchains based on their needs, right? So I think that's going to be interesting to watch for.
Thank you for sharing. And you guys just shared your opinion on now and in 3 to 5 years use case. So does that apply to your investment strategy? What's your investment strategy in short term and also long term?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, as Hans mentioned that 3 to 5 years is a long time in crypto, and so the investment strategy is not so much driven by what's happening in the zk. Some of the fundamental concepts always remain the same, which are you are backing the capability of the founder to be able to identify the problem correctly and being able to iterate over time. I think given we have already seen in the last 2 years they have evolved very, very significantly. So I think the investment is not necessarily based on this team has at the moment a really good zk framework. There are tons of researchers and there is a lot of open source research ongoing. You could work with some of the greatest minds as long as you are able to focus on the problem at hand, as long as you're able to persist to find a solution. I think that's what drives the investment strategy. So for example, you look at the success of optimism, it's obviously doing great, and for anything you could say good things and bad things. And I'm not talking about what's good or bad with optimism, but at the moment optimism has good traction. And for the zk front, they're working with Owen Labs and this because they realize these guys have spent a lot of time doing the research in this space. So it's not necessarily, the investment strategy is not necessarily driven by the zk element of it or the modularity element. It's mostly driven by the team working on the solution, their identification of the problem, and their commitment to solve that problem, and then being able to adapt over time. That what drives the investment strategy.
Yeah, I think for us, we usually follow the most latest innovation in the industry. So I already mentioned the 3 areas that we interested to chat, the modularity space. So besides that, I'm also very interested to see the new projects being evolved, but that will be more on the research side rather than in the product side. And in terms of investment strategy, I think it's still like they want to invest in a company. So no matter whether it's zk or modularity or any kind of technology, they must have the technology innovation. They can be copycat or copy other people's projects. And also from the business model perspective, like how do they turn like the research and also the latest like technology into kind of like the Facebook business model, and how to grow the ecosystem, which is really, really important. So I think for us, like we really want to help the founders to help them to generate the go-to-market line, and also to help them brainstorm like how can they grow the ecosystems. But we are also looking for like the top like the builders and researchers in the space who can drive the critical innovations in the next 3 to 5 years.
No, I do think for us, because I mean you're operating in private markets, so in that sense, the thesis should always be more long-term focus, right? Obviously, you have short-term investors, but yeah, I think for these novel areas like zkDay, modularity, MEV, whatever, intense, right? These are very novel developments. But I mean, I do want to emphasize on the fact that after all, like you are investing in founders and in businesses, right? Because like betting on markup games, right? It's not always sustainable, right? So I think it's very important to actually discover and define like, okay, you're dealing with founders and you're dealing with businesses. So even though they're operating in these like very fundamental pioneering research, but ultimately like what are the products that they're building? Like does it have a clear PMF, so product market fit, or is it just like doing something shiny and then trying to attach a problem to a solution, right? So it's like brute forcing. And I mean, it's hard to kind of find a balance between those two, like these elements, because obviously you want to be pioneering these research, and as an investor, you want to be kind of on the forefront of these trends. So you try to catch these kind of, narratives or these trends early on, but then crypto moves so fast, right? I mean, I think a couple of years ago we were talking about plasma, and now it's all about rollups, and now it's like zk rollups, optimistic rollups, and I mean, we're also still talking about charting, but I mean, Ethereum's roadmap is like maybe decades away, right? So always there's procrastination. So it's hard to find these balance, right? But yeah, I guess like ultimately, like in such an early stage, you're trying to bet on founders, right? Because I mean, you probably have a couple competitors building the similar or same thing, but ultimately, like if the founders, they don't, match the background check, or they actually don't have, these like skill sets, right? Yeah, you can write whatever white paper or pitch deck you want, but it's not going to succeed.
Yeah, look at the founder, look at the team. Thank you for sharing the valuable investment strategy. And I'm sure within our audience, there are early stage startup founders. They are building in zk and also modularity domain. They're still in fundraising phase. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, first thing I would like to acknowledge is that founders come in very, very different flavors. It's not necessary, there's no playbook to adopt, which will lead to success. But I think there are certain things that we should always keep in mind. A few of those on the top of my head, like you should not be building product just based on the narrative that's going on in the market, because narratives shift quite quickly. So you might feel, zk is the next big thing, and hence we just focus on zk. But as I mentioned, I've already mentioned multiple times, the focus should be on the problem statement. And then the other aspect is you should always be open to, you should be quite adaptable and persistent. So if you look at Ethereum's success, Ethereum was not designed to run on scale, but they ended up having that success. But still, Ethereum continues to be the dominant force in the Web3 market, because they have a very long-term vision and a roadmap, which allows them to iterate over time and continue maintaining that product market share over time. So yeah, I think for founders, it's absolutely necessary to have clarity in terms of what's the problem that you're trying to solve, and just you need to be persistent and not FOMO or not decide based on the narratives that there are in the market. You need to take those cues, obviously. I mean, so to say, you can't just use an outdated technology. So, but that there's a thin line between being updated and then try to get decision based on that.
Yeah, I think building a startup is really like a great opportunity cost because you invest a lot of time and money. That is why for other founders, I really suggest be really careful starting your own startups. So don't just I want to do my own startups. And also another suggestion I may give to other founders is before you start to build this product, but you need to validate this idea is actually valid or not. You need to actually do some PMF first to examine your idea whether it's feasible or it's not feasible. So then my suggestion is that if you build in zk space, talking to all the popular founders like ReZero, like Starware, like zkSync, share with them your idea, get the feedback from them, and then talking to top researchers like Barry from PSE, like the other researchers. Then after talking to all those bigger brains in the industry, and then you have the better idea of whether your idea is valid or not. Because eventually, you don't want to build a startups and realize, okay, this idea is not valid. It's actually waste your time and money, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I elaborate a little bit about building a project. Because often in crypto we forget we're building companies. So yeah, and this is an issue I've seen not just in crypto, but it's also a wider tech space. I think a lot of founders, they build a product without actually establishing or confirming their PMF. So, and then they get very attached to the startup, which makes sense because you're spending years, right, to actually keep honing your skills and keep honing the business models. But I think really defining a problem is key, right? Don't come with a solution and try to brute force a problem, because that's what we see too often in the crypto, but also in the tech space in general. And I think maybe a piece of advice for founders that are currently in their fundraising process. So I've heard this question a lot, right? So where founders say, I want to quickly raise my round and then go back to building, right? Maybe for a lot of founders here, you're very familiar with that concept. But I actually, whenever I speak to projects or startups that are trying to rush their fundraising process, I always kind of recommend to do the opposite, right? Because you're basically starting a relationship with your investors. So, if you're fundraising, it is very crucial to identify your shortcomings as a founder. It's because you're leveraging investors, resources and their skill sets to match your shortcomings, right? So it's like speed dating. You're matchmaking with your investors on a long-term relationship to actually build something that's going to work out hopefully in the future, right? So actually, I would recommend double down and instead of only investors due diligencing or researching whether you're a sound project or founding team, you also should spend some time to due diligence your investors. Are they, hands-on investors? Are they actually working their ass off to help you to succeed, right? Or are they just oh, I want to give you some money and then hope you make some money for them, right? So do spend some time and talk to investors and also triangulate whether your investors are really going to be helpful for it. Because I've seen also in the last cycle where founders just raise a bunch of money and they realize, hey, your investors dump on you the first day, right? And that's going to hurt you in the long run. So that's, I think, a very solid piece of advice for founders in this space.
Thank you for sharing your valuable insights. I hope you guys can learn one thing or two. I definitely learned a lot. And thank you for your time today.
Hey guys, thank you so much for attending the panel session. But before we move to the networking session, can you please take 1 minute together on stage here? We're gonna for a group photo with Menta team. Just 1 minute, guys. Kenny and Victor, are you still here? Okay. Yeah. Everyone who likes to take a picture, please feel free to come to the stage.
Save this memory, guys. Guys, feel free to come over. We still have room for more, guys.